Hello and welcome back to my extensive look at Fire Emblem 7 Part 2. I took a break, my head has healed from bashing it against the wall and I feel ready to finish this story. Let's not waste any time and pick it back up where we left off, which is at the beginning of a new journey with a new lord. Eliwood's story starts 1 year after Lin's one ends. We get a bit more insight on the war that happened with humans and dragons, mainly about the heroes and the nation they created thereafter. Hartmut created Bern, a military strength, to the east. Saint Elimine created Etruria, land of mages and artisans. Hanan settled on the nomad plains of Sake. Berrigan the Knight's northern birthplace became known as Ilia. Durban created a warrior paradise on the Western Isles. Athos retired in the western Nabata Desert. And the champion Roland's children shared the region of Lycia, creating its league in the process. There's one more hero to talk about, but this one will come later in the story, as they have not claimed any piece of land to their name. The second part of our story will begin in FIRE, one of the few places in the land that has known no conflicts since the end of the Scouring. Yet, something is amiss. The ruler, therefore Eliwood's father, has gone missing. He was not alone during his travels, being accompanied by his finest knight, yet 1 month has passed and there's no news of him. His son, determined to find his father alive, prepares for a long voyage bound to be perilous. We meet Eliwood and his retainer Marcus, bidding farewell to his mother Eleonora, who is troubled to see her son go. He understands his mom's anxiety, but he needs to find his father and understand why he disappeared. They say their goodbyes and the mom leaves. They won't be alone in their travels, as Marcus dispatched Lowen, a cavalier under his command, to go to the nearby village and get some more hands on deck. Since Eliwood's father left with his best knight, the number of available soldiers is a bit low and he prefers to see them protect his mother. Seems like there's trouble in the village at the same time we're here. A bandit named Grozny decided to make it its stronghold. Lowen manages to escape and come back to Eliwood and Marcus, shaken by the fact the village has been taken over. He was accompanied by the daughter's magistrate called Rebecca, who can vouch for Lowen, explaining that they really are under attack. Without hesitation, Eliwood gives the order to rescue the village. Rebecca can use a bow, so she'll give us a bit of support as well. However, there's another person who offered their help, the famed tactician ourselves. That's right, we'll take the reins of strategy once again, to the delight of Eliwood, seeing a familiar face once again. We were in the area for our training, but will gladly offer our services to the Lord. Let's begin by presenting the new character. Eliwood will be our main lord from now on. He's the goody-two-shoes little lordling protagonist, so you know what to expect. He wields swords and has a rapier as his unique weapon, a sword with an advantage over armor and cavalry. He starts a bit on the slow side, but his growth are good enough that this problem will resolve itself early on. He's also sturdier than Lin, and that's a good thing. On his route, however, he tends to fall short by the end of the game, as his promotion is story-locked and happens towards the last chapter, so he can't make much use out of it. Still, overall, he's a good character that will be useful throughout most of a playthrough. Marcus is your pre-promoted unit that could complete the feud chapter by himself. If you know about Fire Emblem archetypes, Marcus fills the Jagan or Oife character of this game. He can be super useful, but on the other hand, can be an experience funnel if you overuse him. He's one of the first character I decide to bench, as I tend to steer clear from pre-promoted units in the early game, and by the time I remember about him, we're too far in the game to bring him back. Lowen is another cavalier, giving you another mounted unit for you to try. He's a dutiful soldier, albeit a fresh one. He's more of a defensive cavalier compared to Saint and Kent, but can easily replace one of them should they ever fall short. I don't use him much since he's never at the same power level when you get the two other cavaliers back, but he's not a bad choice if you're willing to train him. Rebecca is one special character. Most won't like her as she starts with low bases and must be trained a bit to be reliable, a thing that's more trouble than it's worth, usually. She will eventually get good in speed, skill and luck, but mostly lag behind in strength and defense. She'll probably need some permanent stat booster if she wants to make the cut. That's what I did in this run, and she became one of my most useful units right up until the end. This map is straightforward and will be done quickly. There's only brigands and archers, and there will be a reinforcement for your side on the beginning of the second turn, as 2 fighters will join our side. One we already know. That's right, Dorcas is the first Lin route unit that rejoins on Eliwood's route. He's not alone, he's got a friend with him, the great and mighty Barter. This guy is a special one to me at least. Barter is not exactly Dorcas's equal. While he's more defensive than his counterpart, he starts with bases so bad in skill and speed that he struggles to hit anything and worse, not get doubled. While his skill growth will make his lack of aim resolve itself with time, his speed stays a massive hindrance to this unit's overall ability. Personality-wise, he's a funny one. All browns, no brains. So much so that words he finds difficult to comprehend hurts his head. Then again, he's a very amicable guy with lots of fun support conversations. I always gave him a Walwich voice in my head and it never failed to make me laugh. Wah! Back to the chapter. Use your 2 new units to break through the rest of the enemies to make your way to the boss, but don't forget to visit the village for a Draco Shield, a permanent stat booster that will give any unit that uses it +2 to their defense. Afterwards, the rest is straightforward. Get rid of the enemies and stop by the shop for some vulneraries, then get to Grozny, the last hurdle for the chapter. Another pushover brigand. This boss spouts a lot of bravado, but starts to lose it when he learns that the enemy before him are Feraean Knights. Needless to say, he hits hard, has low accuracy, and isn't a challenge for anyone using swords. The magistrate meets with Eliwood and thanks him for helping the village. Our leader retorts that it's only normal for a lord to protect his people. We learn that unfortunately, not all lords have their people in their heart, as Rebecca's father confirms that their neighboring countrymen of Lost do not have this protection. Seems like this region is preparing for war, a surprising turn of events that turned the situation into a more serious one. If a Lycian territory prepares for war, that means it must be with another Lycian territory, and that's bad news. Eliwood decides to travel to Lost and visit the Marquess to get to the bottom of this, and might even get a lead to find his father. Leaving the village, Eliwood asks us if we'd like to accompany his company, because our tactical skills would be welcome in the ranks. We accept and depart for the next step in our journey. For our next step, we must pass through the Centaurus territory before being able to reach Lost. Eliwood's father probably stopped there as well, so there might be a lead or two. He arranges a meeting with the Marquess in hopes to learn more about the situation. Inside Castle Centaurus, Helmin is meeting with a cloaked figure, seemingly stressed out by Eliwood's approach. The Marquess seems to understand that the young lord is coming to ask for their father, and right he is. He seems to know much about the situation, and since he has known Eliwood for a long time, he fears that he won't be able to hide what he knows. The hooded figure then suggests chasing the young lord away instead. If they don't meet, the Marquess won't have to hide anything. Back to our group, where we're slowly approaching the castle, Eliwood takes a moment to reminisce about the Marquess, stating that he's known him for a long time, just as the older lord was saying. Suddenly, we're approached by a couple of people parading as beggars, which is a poor show since they're armed to the teeth. The big man tells us someone wants Eliwood dead and to that end, we're ambushed. Before closing in on the enemy, you should send one of the horsemen in the village to nab a secret book, another useful item that gives a permanent +2 skill to the unit that uses it. The enemies in this map will chase you for the most part, so use the forts and forests to your advantage as you move forward. Check out the armory and gear yourself if you want, but as soon as you close in, the boss will start moving towards you. Thankfully, at the end of the enemy's turn, a blue-haired man appears, blocked by a soldier from Centaurus not doing anything to prevent the fighting. The man dispatches the soldier and more allies appear, some we already know. This is Hector, Eliwood's best friend and one of the best axe users you'll get in the game. He comes with Sarah, Matthew, and a new face, Oswin. Let's meet the new guys. Hector is the closest thing you'll get to a one-man army in this game. He's the Marquess Ostia's brother, but he's seen as a liability in the noble courts due to his brash personality. He's strong, he's defensive, and is surprisingly fast for a heavy unit. He lacks a bit of skill, but he has the growth to circumvent the problem early on. But he's still an axe user, so accuracy will still be a minor problem. His main weakness is his resistance. Even with a respectable growth, he starts with a whopping 0 in this stat, so he's not to be put against mages. Other than that, Hector is one of the units that'll stay reliable throughout the story. Oswin is another extremely useful unit. He's a knight that starts at a high level and with great availability, with great bases and good growth. He'll be your main tank in the beginning of the game and will probably stay so. He's powerful and defensive and with a ridiculously high speed for an armored knight. Even if his resistance to magic attacks is his obvious weakness, his speed will prevent him to get doubled, making him a reliable tank against almost anything. He's a must for any army. Matthew and Sarah will hide for this fight, making them temporarily unavailable. Yet Hector and Oswin will have no trouble tanking the enemy up top. You can even make Hector talk with Eliwood during the battle if you make them meet up. At that point, how you want to tackle the boss is up to you. You can turtle yourself and wait for him, or meet him halfway. I like the former strategy as you can finish the wounded enemies with your weaker units, but it can be a bit grating waiting for the boss to pass through the mountains and forests. No matter what you choose to do, you'll have to face the big boy Zagan. With that big steel axe, you'd think that Zagan would be slowed down considerably, but he has stupidly high constitution, making him not lose any attack speed, so that can take some players by surprise. He won't be fast enough to double anyone but Bartra, so it's not so bad. Beware his high attack and take advantage of his low accuracy to prevail without much trouble. Hector greets Eliwood much to the latter's shock. Eliwood thought that Hector would be busy as his brother Uther just got named Marquess of Ostia, but here he is, preferring to come help us instead. The two guys share a bro moment before Hector presents Oswin, then Sarah and Matthew jump in on the conversation. After a bit more banter, Marcus enters the scene, filling Hector in on the fact that someone wants Eliwood dead. The Axe Lord states that the Centaur's soldiers stationed there didn't even lift a finger to prevent the skirmish. Something is amiss. Eliwood then addresses us about the situation. We believe that something happened to the Marquess, but before we decide to move on, we present ourselves to Hector, who has a bit of skepticism about our strategist abilities. Eliwood vouches for us, making Hector give us the benefit of the doubt. Additionally, we meet once more with Matthew and Sarah, who both are happy to meet us again. After the events that happened, it's clear that there's a target in Eliwood's back. He's pretty sure that this is related to his father's disappearance, so he keeps moving forward in hopes that the truth will be revealed once he reaches Castle Centaurus. In the castle, we have another scene between Lord Helmond and the hooded figure who's called Epilogue. The Lord is visibly frustrated at him since the amount of force that was used to scare Eliwood was way overboard. Then and there, he resolves to tell everything to Eliwood once he arrives. The hooded man tries to make Helmond backtrack, but it's fruitless, so he decides the Marquess isn't of use anymore and stabs him, leaving the old man to die. Back to our heroes. The castle is now in sight, and as is the tradition, a shady guy appears before them, threatening to kill them. Hector is not intimidated at all, making the dude go back to the castle being reinforced by his men. In a nearby fort, there's a green-haired guy getting ready for his first day at work, a bit reluctant, but he remembers his misfortune in the nearby past and mentions Matthew by name. Seems our thief know the guy. You can go two ways on this map. The route down is recommended to level up your units. The village on this path nets you a mine, an item that has game-breaking potential. There's another way on the left, where you can get a torch from the village in the corner as well. You can send a few units this way to get behind the castle and eliminate the few soldiers stationed there, but the bulk of the stage will be down at the bridge where Guy waits for you. He has a killing edge, a sword with a higher crit chance, making him a dangerous foe. What's more, there's some reinforcements that will come out of the nearby forts once you close in. The trick is to lure Guy with Hector or a weaponless Oswin to mitigate any damage as well as attract any other heat. Then send Matthew talk to Guy to recruit him and learn about how they know each other. As a unit, Guy is the textbook Myrmidon, having high skill tying in with Matthew for the highest speed growth in the game. While not exactly bad, his strength and resistance are nothing to write home about, and his defense is obviously abysmal. With a bit of effort, Guy can still become a reliable unit, capable of dodging most attack and dish a lot in way of crits. It's not a unit I use a lot, but I did in this playthrough, and I didn't regret it one bit. Once he joins you, the rest of the stage is a cinch, especially if you send some units behind the castle. There's only the boss left to fell to seize it. Boys may be quite scary, being level 13, having both high strength and defense, and equipped with a steel lance. Thankfully, it's his only weapon, so some chip damage can be done from far away. His avoid benefits a lot from the tile he's on, so it might take a bit of work to whittle down his health, seeing as he recovers it a bit each turn. Your best bet in close quarter is Hector with his wolf bale. It will tear the boss's armor apart, even if he can retaliate somewhat. By the way, there's another mechanic I should talk about, seeing it's active since chapter 11, the support conversations. When you put two compatible units next to each other, a value will go up, and when it gets to a certain threshold, a support conversation will be available between the two units, giving a bit of insight into their relationship, also giving the players some more character development. As an additional bonus, the two characters will share some stat upgrades as long as they're close to one another on the battlefield. These stat bonuses are given depending on the two units' affinity, the element governing what stat is increased, making some pairs more useful than others. This advantage has a limit. You will only have 5 conversations per character per playthrough. You can see which character can support which on the preparation screen once you get to chapter 14. We see Centru's castle and enter it to find Helmond still clinging to life. In his last breath, he confirms to Eliwood he knows about his father and, even worse, played a part in his disappearance. To make amends, he points Eliwood to Loss, stating that its Marquess knows everything. With last warning against a group called the Black Fang, he finally succumbs to his wounds, leaving not only our lords in disarray, but the castle staff as well. Resolved to get to the bottom of this, Eliwood decides to go to Loss and meet with its Marcus. With a last prayer to Lord Helman, we leave the castle. A guidance chapter will be available if you've visited the upper village in the previous map. The words of Lord Helman still ringing in his ears, Eliwood moves towards the territory of Loss, with every footstep feeling heavier than the previous. Passing through Kalen, they decide to stop for the night in a nearby village. However, the night is setting faster than they expected, so the party decides to raise a camp instead. Since they're passing through Kalen, Hector wonders if they should stop by the castle and present themselves to the Lord. Eliwood replies that it's not necessary as they're just passing through, yet wonder how Lynn is going now that she's settled at the castle. They bicker for a while, but the fun is cut short as a scream is heard nearby. Our heroes decide to jump in and help. The merchant from the village in the previous chapter has been intercepted by bandits trying not to get mugged. Only goes so far as the bandits are running out of patience. Thankfully, we appear right on time to save the peddler. The enemies are scared as the leader decides to take us on, vanishing in the darkness. This will be a protection map in a fog of war. We start in the middle and the enemies will come from every side to attack us. You can use Marcus to rescue Merlinus and keep them together as Marcus won't be hindered very much by the NPC. Alternatively, you can secure all entryways to the piece of land by putting your units on all bridges, making it impossible for enemies to reach the VIP. Don't forget to send someone to the village at the top right of the map. A whopping 5,000 gold waits for you there. Get there quick, as there are bandits in the dark going for the village as well. As far as enemies go, you'll face a mix of swordsmen, bandits, archers, some being nomads, and cavaliers. The boss is hidden at the top left of the map, with many units being there. They'll break the snags and slowly make their way to you. Check out the forts down right as well, as there's some enemies at the start, but reinforcements will come out from there at about the third turn, quickly switching positioning of their forces as the chapter advances, so don't forget to put some units down there. Keep repelling the enemies, and if you feel like you can reach the boss without too much trouble, go for it. Beware, as he will move towards anyone in his range. Huzon will wait for an opportunity to strike, so if you can, set up a unit in the upper fort to help take the hit. He is well rounded, and his constitution make him able to wield a steel sword without trouble. Despite his good stats, lance users can still stand up to him quite well. Oswin's your best bet, but Lowen can also take him on. Once the bandits were driven away, we check if Merlinus is safe, and seeing that he is, we prepare to depart. The merchant does not want to let us go, as he wants to reward us with something. Eliwood refuses, but Merlinus insists. Hector takes the time to show us his lack of mannerism in a most funny way, but the merchant stays on track. After all, his saviors are from the biggest houses of Lycia. He wanted to travel across the land to sell his goods, but it's becoming a rather dangerous decision. Hector then has the brilliant idea to take the peddler under their wing, as it could be a boon to have someone able to store our excess items. Merlinus jumps on the occasion, making him our new item manager, a thing Hector takes advantage of immediately. The day rises and our journey continues. Therein, the Marquess of Loss has the answer we're searching for. After the recent events, Eliwood moves forward with a heavy heart, fearing the weight of the truth he's searching for. In Castle Loss, we have a scene between Darren and his son Eric, confirming that Eliwood is fast approaching. The Lord asks a familiar face, Epilogue, why is Eliwood coming to them? The hooded man replies that Lord Helman must have been alive when we've reached him and could have spilled the beans with his last breath. Darren starts panicking, but Ephidel thinks he won't be able to do much about it, except warning Ostia. This does little to calm Darren, but he is reminded that to go to Ostia, our group must pass through laws, giving them a chance to stop us before we can cross. Eric jumps in, demanding to command the troops. He has a trick up his sleeve, as he is an acquaintance of both Eliwood and Hector, the trio being old classmates. He thinks they will drop their guard, seeing a familiar face, making them easy pickings afterwards. Despite Ephidel's protests, Darren accepts his son's request, trusting him completely. Back to our group. Our lords are disheartened to see that Loss really is preparing for war. This does not bode well, as what Eliwood fears is getting more and more real. He does not want to go to war, as he'd rather settle things the peaceful way, but looking around him, he cannot deny that war is the most likely outcome. Marcus then comes in the picture, announcing a singular knight is asking to see Eliwood. This knight is revealed to be Eric, so he accepts the meeting request. Hector cannot stand the guy, so he decides to go and scout around the field instead. Eric greets Eliwood in a jolly tone, but our lord does not fall for the pleasantries. Ignoring this, the knight starts questioning him about Ostia specifically, making his facade pretty obvious. Eliwood does not answer, asking Eric his own question instead. What's happening here? But no answer. The mask slips off and Eric reveals his true colors. Hector then comes back and startles Eric, saying that there are soldiers hiding everywhere. We're ambushed. While all of this is happening, an unassuming old lady comes at us and strikes a conversation. This woman is Hannah, a fortune teller that can help us in way of auguries, telling us which kind of weapon will be advantageous in the battle and if there's a specific unit we should deploy. It's going to be helpful, so we agree to let her travel with us. She'll ask for a measly 50 gold per augury, so take advantage of it at every prep screen. This will also be the first chapter where you'll be able to deploy Merlinus if you've completed the Guidem chapter. While he can't move, if he's on the map, you will be able to send him the items that cannot fit into a unit's inventory instead of having to get rid of it altogether. He'll need some protection, seeing as he can't move and can be targeted by enemy units. If he's defeated, he'll escape for the rest of the chapter, preventing you from storing further items, but if you manage to protect him, he'll level up for each map he is defended. Each level up will bolster him significantly, and he can even change class, eventually making him able to move around with the carriage. Before our player turn, we'll have a small scene in the nearby village where we can see Urk asking for some help to get him and his employer out of the region. He is denied of any help, being told that he should do as the Marquess orders. Urk isn't convinced, leaves the village and appears as a green unit on the field. The map is quite big and you'll have to spread your units around if you want to reach everything. Urk will also move towards the enemies, attacking them and being attacked as well, so reach him fast if you want to keep him alive. He will refuse anyone if you try to recruit him, stating that he's already escorting someone else, but Sarah can force him back into our group. On the start of the second turn, there will be another scene, this time from the village down the map. We see Priscilla, Urk's employer, talking to a villager that seems much more understanding than the one Urk was talking to. Even if they cannot help her, the residents are still giving Priscilla asylum because they have no love for the Marquess, seeing how he treats his subjects. This is a giveaway that if you manage to reach the bottom village, Priscilla will decide to join us. If Sarah isn't available for some reason, you can still recruit Urk by making Priscilla talk to him. Be mindful of Eric, as he will attack if you're in his reach like I did, but more on him later, as there is a bit more to cover before describing the boss. The upper village will give you an iron blade. a more powerful but heavier version of the Iron Sword. Also, after a couple of turns, Hannah will warn you that rain is coming, reducing everyone's movements. That's actually the ideal way to close in on Eric, as the rain will clear on our turn so we can move in first. The last thing to take in consideration on this map is the forts in the water. Late in the map, some enemies will appear and prey on Merlin as if you didn't leave him a bodyguard or two. And finally, let's talk about Priscilla. Priscilla can be quite useful. She has good availability and starts with good stats and okay growth, except in magic, surprisingly. She'll stay vulnerable to physical attacks throughout the game and may be quite a hassle to level up at first, but she'll pick up the slack once promoted, making her a good contender for an early promotion. Personally, I prefer keeping only one base class healer, and since Sarah comes a bit before her, I often decide to keep Sarah and bench Priscilla since I already started putting resources on the former, but there's no harm in doing the switch, seeing as some players will prefer mountain movement. Alright, everything for this chapter is covered, let's move on to the boss. Eric will come at you with everything he has. He wields a silver lance, making him a dangerous opponent. Mix in the fact that he moves in when you get close and you can easily get taken by surprise. That's why it's a good decision to wait for the ring to appear before closing in on him. Hector is once again the perfect unit to take him on, but you can also use Marcus as I did to bait him and get damage so he can be defeated by your other units. He can have a special conversation with both Eliwood and Hector as well. Once he's down, you just need to sweep up the rest of the opposition and the battle will be cleared. With Eric defeated and captured, we search the castle for his father, who is nowhere to be found. This news unsettles Eric, who's appalled that his own father will abandon him. In his despair, he tells Eliwood about Epilogue, the mysterious figure we keep seeing. The man appeared 1 year ago, instilling the seeds of rebellion in Darren's mind, as he always felt like he deserved to be all of Lycia's leader, and with the appearance of Epilogue, he started to put his plan into motion, starting by sending a message to other territories. Seems like Eliwood's father had approved of the idea as well as Marcus and Toulouse, much to Eliwood's disbelief, and he was in loss 6 months ago to seal his approval. There was, however, a heavy argument, as Lord Albert never trusted Epilogue and disappeared right after leaving the castle. Eliwood leaves, torn apart. On one hand, his father is alive, but on the other, why did he approve of the rebellion? Both our lords agree that there must be a reason, that Albert had to have an ulterior motive. So our sights are now on the mysterious group, the Black Fang, who seems to be much more involved than they thought. Our group prepares themselves to chase Lord Darren, but the thing is that they don't know his whereabouts for now, so they stay in Lost Castle for a bit in case the Lord would come back to it. Don't worry, they'll make themselves known soon enough. While they keep searching, Eliwood wonders why Ostia does not do anything to help the situation. It's been 5 days since the recent events, so word of it must have reached Lord Uther, but nothing seems done. Hector explains that his brother already has his hands full, as Bern, the other mite of the continent, has been behaving oddly lately, and Ostia needs to keep tabs on them to prevent a sudden invasion of Lycia. He is at the head of the Elysian League after all, so he needs to show stability, otherwise word would spread quickly about his inadequacy. When Eliwood asks Hector why he's not at his brother's side, he explains that his reputation makes him a liability in court. If he was there with him, it would be a clear sign that something is amiss. Marcus breaks the conversation with some dire news from the east. Darren has launched a surprise attack on Kalen Castle. There's no information about the Marquess or Lindis, however, so we don't know how they fare. No matter, we swiftly depart to their aid. At Castle Kaelin, we can see that Lynn safely escaped with her retainers, Will and Florina. Kent comes back with the result of his scouting. They may have just escaped, but Lynn wants to go back to save her grandfather. It's a bit of a tough mission with their numbers, but they've already heard that Eliwood managed to seize Lost Castle, so maybe they could ask for reinforcements. Will volunteers to go, but Florina insists to go instead as she has air superiority and is also an opportunity to show her progress as a knight. Lynn agrees to Florina's request and she departs. Eliwood and company arrives at the same time. Lost soldiers stationed at the castle spots the Pegasus flying away. Hector sees the archers advancing and quickly understands they're aiming at Florina. She avoids the arrows in the nick of time but loses balance and falls over. Luckily, she's unscathed as she fell on Hector, cushioning her fall. We then get the detail of Lynn's plan and decide to support her advance. You will be able to control all of Lynn's units right at the beginning of the battle, so you'll have to make both groups move. There are 2 villages on the bottom of the map, and it's generally a good idea to start moving your 2 groups towards them, as there are thieves on the map and bandits will appear as reinforcements. Keep in mind that Lynn's group starts near armor and shops, and she starts with a gem, its color depending on your funds management in her route, so it's a good idea to use the group there to send extra equipment to Merlinus' tent. Also, keep someone with your merchant, as he will get attacked by the end of the chapter by cavaliers spawning where Eliwood's army starts. The bottom left village contains a red gem, while the middle one will give you a heavy spear, effective against armor. After the villages are safe, make your way up the map and get both groups merged together before getting to the castle. It's also good to know that enemy reinforcements will appear close to where Lynn's group starts, so don't let them stay there. The 2 forts in front of the castle will spawn enemies when you get close, so be careful of that as well. Once you're done with them, there'll be only 1 enemy left to fight. Walker will stand in your way as the last bastion before you can enter the castle. He's going to be a challenging opponent, being pretty strong and having unusually high resistance for an armored knight. He wields a javelin so he can attack from both near and far. The heavy spear could give you an advantage, but it goes without saying that Hector with his wolf bale or any axe unit with a hammer are your best bets here. Hector approves this message. We've managed to retake the outside of the castle and unite our 3 lords together. Eliwood feels a bit responsible for the events that transpired, but after hearing his reasons, Lynn reassures him that he's not to be blamed for what happened. Hector and Lynn meet formally, but they start to quarrel right away, setting the tone for these 2 as the travel will go on. We also get a warm greeting from our old allies, as it's the first time we've seen them since the events 1 year prior. The scene changes to Hausen and Darren, the latter just being informed that their forces outside the castle have been routed. Hausen tries to convince Darren to capitulate and turn his back on his ambitions, but is stabbed from behind by Epilogue, reminding Darren it's too late to turn back, that the deaths of the Marcus Centaurus and now Kaelin are on his hands, even if he did not kill them outright. You can't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs after all. They will leave everyone behind since the plan did not go as well as they anticipated. Next step, they will go to the Dragon's Gate, as that part of the plan is still going well. Leaving Darren to his preparation, Epilogue calls his subordinate, Layla, to finish Hausen and hide his body to make Eliwood's group lose precious time before they give chase. Despite the Kaelin region liberated from loss, its castle is filled with soldiers refusing to capitulate, so we must put a stop to their folly. Entering the premises, Lynn informs our group that half of the Kaelin soldiers remain, most being killed in the surprise attack. Some are imprisoned, so it would be a good idea to check on them as well. Make your preparations and begin the mission. Before beginning your first phase, Eliwood will ask you to be mindful of the prisoners and try to keep them alive. This is a hint that if you do, there will be some kind of reward for you. Keep a unit down with Merlinus and bring Matthew as well, as there are lots of chests to open and some have pretty good rewards. Also, Priscilla will be important in this map as she can recruit someone here. Make your way into the first room of the castle and send your thief along with a high movement unit to the chests on the left. The right one contains a hero quest, a promotional item, while the one on the left has an unlocked staff so you can open doors from a distance. At the end of your first turn, you'll see a prisoner defecting to the enemy's side because he holds a grudge against Ostia, and seeing as Hector is among the liberators, it would be an opportunity for him to get revenge. There's also a familiar face among the prisoners as well. The mercenary will not move until someone gets in his attacking range, so no worries there. As you progress in the battle, a scene will play out where the prisoners had weapons and a key hidden so they could help if reinforcements were to come. They didn't expect Lucius to join, but got a tome for him anyway so he could at least defend himself. Cool dudes. The soldiers will then start advancing towards any enemies in their way except for Raven, who will not attack them in turn, but shamans will start spawning in the nearby room to ambush them. Once you've lured Raven, make him talk to Priscilla to make him switch sides again now that he knows that his sister is traveling with us, along with keeping his personal enemy closer. Raven is from a noble family that has fallen by the time of the events of the game. He's the older brother of Priscilla and a good friend of Lucius. Stats-wise, he's a solid and durable unit with his main strengths being his HP, attack and speed. While his level is a bit on the lower side, his starting stats are good enough to make him take the front and get experience. With some more levels, he has the potential to be one of the units that you will take to the last chapter. You can then take Raven back to Lucius to recruit him as well. Afterwards, take the chests containing a knight's crest on the left and a silver sword on the right and move on to the boss. Bernard is the commander of Loss's forces and has one hell of a stash to prove it. While he's in general and has the strength to match, he has somewhat low HP for a promoted unit. Paired with his low speed, he's an easy target for the Knight's Bane weapons and any axeman in general. Marcus Kalin is nowhere to be found as we've seen. That is, until Layla appears and reveals she's actually an Ostian spy, being recognized by Hector. Instead of killing Lord Hausen like she was ordered to, she hid and cared for him, saving his life. We also learned that she's infiltrated the Black Fang on Uther's orders to learn more about Eliwood Father's disappearance, and she has news to share. Going somewhere more private, Layla confirms that Albert is still alive, so our journey is not for naught. She tells the trio more about the group called Black Fang. They're a group of assassins founded a decade earlier by a man named Brendan Reed. They come from Bern, but they have expanded in many countries since their foundation. They stole from the rich and gave to the poor, giving them a lot of support from the masses. 1 year ago, however, Brendan married a woman, and operations have changed since then. Anyone is a fair target, as long as it pays. This woman infiltrated the Black Fang and is using them to perform tasks to serve a man called Nurgle, who is the mastermind behind it all. That's not everything. Epilogue is also tied in with Nurgle, being the spark that lit up Loss's rebellion. When Darren told the neighboring Marcuses of his plan, Centaurus was the first to answer favorably, Farah being second. Layla cannot confirm if Albert really endorsed Darren's plan, but what she knows is that they're both at the Dragon's Gate on an island called Valor. This bodes ill, as Valor is also nicknamed the Dread Isle, as no man that sets foot on it comes back at all. This does not deter our heroes, and so they decide to go on the island and learn the truth of it all. Before departing, Layla describes Ephidel as eerie. Despite his cloak, his eyes are remarkable in the sense that they seem inhuman, a physical trait that some antagonists will share. In an additional scene, we can see Matthew chatting with Layla, revealing that they might be more than simple co-workers. Depending on how many green units you manage to keep alive, they'll give you an item. In my case, I managed to keep 2 alive, so they gave me a light room. This will also give you access to a guide in chapter and to expand the story a bit more. The information our lords got from Layla makes them set their sights on the Dread Isle. In order to get there, they'll have to find a ship that will be willing to take them. Negotiations are a bit difficult, as it's not a coincidence the locals call Valor the Dread Isle. Seeing as our group are insistent despite his warnings, the villager points out that there might be a way if we're willing to set sail on a pirate ship. Both guys are considering it, but Lynn vehemently refuses. Quite the fair reaction, as for her, bandits on land or pirates on sea, they're all the same. She storms out in frustration while the 2 friends enter the tavern where the captain of the pirates is located. Inside, they meet with the captain, who nags them a bit, unnerving Hector. Eliwood manages to keep his cool, impressing the man who presents himself as Fargus, captain of the Davros. He will accept our request if we manage to pay his fee, 100,000 gold. It's a steep price, but Eliwood accepts. Going back outside, we brainstorm a plan to raise money via the arena, fighting our way to the gold. Before we move on with the plan, one of Fargus's pirates stops the group and tells them that the plans have changed. The pirate crew will come at us, and our goal will be to reach the port and talk with the captain for him to grant our request. Seems like an odd turn of event, but Fargus would rather have some fun than get some gold, so some fun he will get. You'll have to be careful on this map. There's a pirate blockade in both the middle and bottom path, so that lets the upper path to move forward. The block of pirates will not move if you don't get in their range, but there's many houses to visit, so many items you can get. If you want to be safe, take the upper route, but the blockade is manageable if you know what you get into. The pirates' weapons are pretty scary, killer arms and silver axes. The mage has an Hellfire tome, and the shaman can hurt a lot with his Nosferatu tome. The other pirates in the vicinity also have weapons efficient against armor and cavalry, so resistance will be high and you must maneuver carefully. What's more is that by the end of the first turn, a paladin named Damien and his group will appear to chase you down. He is equipped with a killer sword and will act as the boss for this chapter, but he's quite a pushover against anyone who has a high defense. To give you an example, Eliwood can go toe-to-toe with Damien with his rapier equipped. If you don't approach him, he'll wait for you to get close to Fargus before moving in to attack. Now that most of the enemies are covered, let's talk about red houses. From where you start, bottom house will net you a devil axe, an axe with a high power stat but can hurt you instead of the enemy, so it's not a recommended weapon to use. The house over contains a new unit, a shaman called Canis, who is one of my favorite units. The third house inside the walls contains a short bow, the one on the top left corner of the map holds a lance reaver, and the last house will give you a sleep staff. Before finishing the map, let's present the new unit. Look, I won't deny I'm biased when it comes to shamans. They're my favorite class in most of the Fire Emblems where they're available. Canis isn't an exception to the rule. He's a scholar coming from a family that specializes in the dark arts, or ancient magic as they call it. He enjoys his research so much that he can sometimes read a book on the battlefield. Stats-wise, Canis is a good all-rounder, not having any particular strengths or weaknesses. He starts a bit on the slow side, but it's not too inconvenient as it tends to resolve itself after a couple of levels or when you promote him. Canis will always have a place in my army, that's for sure. One last thing before finishing the chapter, there's a pirate that's called Dart that stays put over the arena. You cannot recruit him, but do not attack him either. He will be joining us in another chapter. Once you've done all you wanted to do, talk to Fergus and finish the chapter. It was an ordeal, but we made it. The captain had his fun and we have our passage. Everyone wins. Our group board the ship and the passage is smooth overall. Eliwood takes the time to think about his father, and the more he thinks about him, the less he thinks he's part of the conspiracy. He only hopes he's safe. On the ship, Fergus approaches Eliwood to see how he fares on the vessel. They exchange pleasantries until our young lord asks the captain a question. Why did Fergus agree to board our army, especially when the general population saw us as loonies? Fergus's answer is a bit foggy, but all in all, he felt like taking the challenge and he liked our odds. For a pirate, Captain and his crew are a respectful bunch. Suddenly, Dart appears in the scene claiming they've recovered a small boat adrift. Knowing the currents in the vicinity, the captain claims the dory comes from Valor. Inside is a familiar girl. Dart asks Lynn for help as he does not know exactly where to grab the girl, which is another point of respect for the pirate despite Hector's nagging. We recognize Ninian, but she does not recognize us, as she seemed to have lost her memory. The group decides to take her along with us, but it's at this moment that another ship appears from the fog, and this one is aggressive. They manage to breach the hull of the ship we're on, making all the crew needed below deck to repair the damage so they don't sink. This means that our army will have to take on the enemies on the surface while the pirates keeps us afloat. The battle part of this chapter is simple enough. Shamans on the left, swordsmen on the right. There will be some Pegasus Knights about as well, but not enough to be a problem. It's also recommended to bring Matthew on this map, as the boss has a Speedwing in his inventory, and Speedwings are the most elusive of the stat booster items. Also, Dart suggests you to visit their armory and shop, as you won't be able to replenish your inventory on the island, so it's the last call to do it. As for the general strategy of this map, send your lance unit on the right and your magic units on the left and keep the enemies off your ship. If you manage to do so, you'll be able to survive without any trouble. Be sure to defeat the enemy shaman holding a guiding ring, the item to promote your magic units. Attacking the boss is optional but feasible as long as you're careful. Zoldem wields a Lunatome, a dangerous dark magic that ignores any unit's resistance and holds a high crit rate. This means that the boss will kill any unit he crits, except for high HP units such as Dorcas. Magic units are not recommended because of this and the fact that Zoldem has a ridiculous resistance stat. That Lunatome is heavy, however, so the boss is susceptible to double hits. Pray he doesn't crit you on his first attack, as if he does not, you should be able to dispatch him. Keep in mind that if you kill him, the battle will end even if there are turns remaining, so don't kill him too soon if you want to farm for experience. When the timer expires or you've defeated the boss, Fergus and his mates will come up and take care of the rest of the enemy's forces. If there are some left, that is. Ninian also comes out of her room but slips on the blood on the deck, only to be catched by Eliwood. The poor girl is so scrambled she does not even remember her own name at the moment. Pirate crew does not want to keep her as they are a bit superstitious, but it's not that problematic seeing as Lynn insists we bring her with us. When she met the siblings last year, the pair were chased by dark-robed men, tying them to the Black Fangs, so protecting them might be beneficial. We get to the island, but before resuming our travels, Fergus tells us that he'll wait for us for 2 weeks, so we'd better be back by then. He also lets Dart join us to bolster our numbers. The only thing the captain wants from us is that we come back alive. After we get our bearings, we prepare ourselves to enter the island's forest in order to find the Dragon's Gate. Ninian seems to react when she hears about the gate, but no more is said. The voyage continues on the island. The fog is thick and ominous, and the forest is dense. The group must move carefully if they ever want to come back. We get a scene at the Dragon's Gate between Albert and Nurgle. Albert being framed as the one who let the children go, with Darren being anxious as always. In this exchange, we learn about the ultimate goal of the villains: bring back the dragons to this world. These are extremely dangerous, but for some reason, Darren thinks Nurgle's power is strong enough to be able to subjugate the dragons. For what purpose? Layla's intel was also on the spot. The Lycia rebellion was instigated by Nurgle to amass some kind of energy. Albert tries to attack him but gets hurt in the process. There's still a use for him, so he must be kept alive for the moment. Morphs are called and orders are given. He sends the woman, Limstella, to burn to contact another woman called Sonia, while Ephidel will stay on the island with Darren to stop Eliwood in his tracks. To end the scene, Nurgle then informs Albert that the person he sent Ephidel get rid of is actually his son, who in turn brought back Ninian to the island. What a desperate turn of events. Not too far from there, Layla was eavesdropping but got caught by Ephidel just before she could leave the place. He knows of her betrayal, and the price to pay for betraying the Black Fang is your life. Unfortunately, Layla won't make it back to Hector alive, and her body will serve as a warning for the incoming intruder. Our group finds the message soon after, regrettably. To turn the knife in the wound, we even assist to a scene between Hector and Matthew, the latter trying to keep his composure, but he's clearly hurt, seeing as he wanted him and Layla to retire after this mission and live together. He was one mission too late. He asks to be the one who bury her, a request Hector accepts without hesitation. Despite the sad event, our lords seem undaunted and want to keep moving to prevent further losses. It's at this moment that Ninian senses danger, and suddenly, a man comes out of the fog and takes Lyn hostage. The man wants Ninian, but Lyn realizes he is of Sacaean descent. He presents himself as Yuhai of the Black Fang, and tells us he was sent to recover the girl and kill our lot. He wants to make a deal, however. If we agree to give him Ninian and turn back, he'll let us go. Naturally, we are opposed to this plan, even if Yuhai warns us of the fearful power Nurgle possesses. In the end, he lets Lyn go, stating that he's a man of principle. He will defeat us, but will at least let us fight for our lives. Despite being our enemy, the man treats us with respect, which makes it even more bittersweet when you learn he cannot be recruited. It's a fog of war map, but thankfully, Matthew is still available to use in this battle. Take Florina as well on this map, there will be a use for her. What's more is that Dart will be available to use from this chapter onwards. The only pirate representative of your army, Dart was found on the pier bloody and amnesiac. After being brought back to health, he dedicated his life to his savior Fargus. He starts with mid-stat and will struggle to hit properly, but his strength and speed will make him a fearsome addition to your numbers. If you decide to put some work in him and promote him, he will be a crit machine on par with sword masters, trading accuracy for power, so he'll one-shot pretty much everything he touches. Keep him away from mages though. You have two ways you can go. The upper path will have some flyers, pirates and some magic units, but the bulk of the army will be down the bottom path. I like to split my army in two and go both ways at the same time to quickly sweep up the map. Use the snags as well to reach the enemies in the small plot of land in the middle. There's going to be a lot of nomads and cavaliers, so cavalry-bearing weapons are recommended. By the third turn, a Pegasus Knight called Fiora will appear as a green unit where you started the battle. She can only be recruited by Florina, which is also her sister. Fiora is, in general, a good character. When you meet her, she's battling with survivor's guilt, being the only one alive after a surprise attack on her unit. That's why only Florina can recruit her, as she's the only one able to bring her sister back to her senses. That's why she's viable right when you get her, but if you put some effort in Florina already and she had good level ups, she has the potential to be better than her sister. In case she did not, Fiora is a good replacement. For a Pegasus Knight, she has good HP, skill and resistance growth, so she's great for sniping magic units as long as there's no archers around. Since there's a lot of nomads hidden in the fog, I prefer to let the Pegasus sisters stay at the base and protect Merlinus, since there are some reinforcements that will appear at the top left of the map. Proceed carefully down and the boss will be located at the bottom right corner. Be careful, as there will be a bunch of enemies hiding with him to ambush you. Once they're done, there's only Yuhai left to beat. While he's pretty dangerous, Yuhai mainly uses bows and won't move in to attack, so you can easily take care of him by letting him attack you with one and then get in close quarters. He can still use a sword, so watch out if you don't manage to beat him on your turn, which could happen due to his high HP for Nomad. Also, Linen Guy can have a special conversation with the boss, giving you more insight on his personality and reasons to block your path. Nevertheless, Eliwood had to dispatch him so we could move forward. As a last favor, Yuhai lets you know the way to the Dragon's Gate so you don't get lost in the forest. You'll also get an Orion's Bolt as a reward, the promotional item for archers and nomads. Our lords choose to believe Yuhai's last words and they depart in the direction mentioned. But if you manage to finish the chapter in 15 turns or less, you'll get access to a guided chapter. Our heroes follow their last opponent's directions, treading carefully all the while, but that won't prevent the Black Fang to get in their way as a new threat looms on the horizon. We arrive at the rotten tree Yuhai mentioned, so we know what direction to take to progress, but Eliwood seems distracted. He's still thinking about what Eric said previously about his father's involvement in the rebellion. Marcus tells him that he does not think Albert was conspiring, and Eliwood agrees with that thought. Still, there's something about it all that leaves him feeling uneasy. Marcus reassures him that his worries are because he cannot yet see the big picture, explaining his father's involvement. This helps the young lord to get out of his head, and both mention how the air on the island worsens their negative thoughts. Suddenly, both characters notice that Hector is making a ruckus, so they go check on him. He is having a loud argument with Lynn. Eliwood steps in and diffuses the situation, probably caused by the ominous air, just like he was brooding earlier. They all snap out of it, thankfully. Not too far from there, a conversation happens between a Black Fang member and his boss, having scouted our group, confirming that Yuhai failed in his mission. Ion berates his former colleague and bets his planning will go much better. He's a bit pompous and prideful about it though, it certainly makes him unlikable. Back to our group, Eliwood thinks he can see the ruins to the Dragon Gates in sight, but is surprised by an enemy teleporting in their vicinity, warning them that they won't reach the ruins. There's something special that will happen in this battle. As a heads up, let your mages on the bench for this fight, you'll understand soon enough. The enemies are mostly mages and knights, with some Pegasite thrown into the mix, and one brigand to go and attack the bottom ruins, which act as a red roofed house. The flyers and mages closest to you will go straight for you, so move carefully and expect them. Stay prudent until the end of your third turn. By then, a mysterious figure will appear, silencing any magic unit in his area of effect. This is Kishuna. His involvement in the game is minor, but he's quite important for the world building, so I will talk about him later when he'll become more relevant, as we have more story pieces to place before his piece can be explained. Anyway, when he appears, it's your time to strike. Get in the zone and smash everyone in your way. Knights will spawn in the forts in the middle as you approach, and while you cannot use your magic units, they're still quite easy to take down. Just use armor-based weapons and you'll be fine. If you visit the ruins, you'll get a goddess icon, a stat booster that upgrades your luck by 2. Afterwards, it's pretty straightforward until you reach the boss. Take advantage of the anti-magic barrier to get some experience to units that need it. By the way, you can also attack Kishuna and his units as well. The soldiers are a great source of experience, especially the snipers, but be warned that if you attack Kishuna, he'll retreat at the beginning of the next enemy turn, so if you do attack him, do it after you've killed the boss. Speaking of the boss, here he is. Ion is the easiest boss in the game if the magic barrier is still active, as he won't be able to counterattack. Use him to get some easy experience. If he can't attack you, he'll keep his bolting tome equipped, which is super heavy, reducing his speed even more. He still can evade rather often, but what good evading can do if you can't counterattack? After our victory, our lords' minds get clearer now that the ominous energy dissipated. They speculate that this energy must have come from the magic barriers that was in the area earlier. No matter, the way to the Dragon's Gate is now clear and we resume the march. Following Yuhai's directions, we move on in the forest until we reach an impressive construction that does not seem to have been built by human hands. We finally reach our destination, where destiny will play out. The gate is imposing, and upon arrival, Ninian starts shaking uncontrollably, sensing that a terrible power is near. She can't remember why, but she should not be here. Something bad will happen. Eliwood tries to shake her off the feeling but can't, deciding to retreat instead. Before they can do so, they're intercepted by Epilogue, who came to recover Ninian. Despite the first meeting between him and our lords, Epilogue seems to know all about us already. He taunts the group by asking how they liked the little gift he left them at the entrance, speaking about Layla, a thing that angers Hector. While the lords are distracted, Epilogue swoops in to snatch Ninian and escape to the back, where our Lord Darren awaits. He gets commanded to deal with us, as they can now prepare for the ritual, and we need to be taken care of. The enemy returns to Nurgle to deliver Ninian. Albert is also on the scene, seemingly bound to assist at what will happen. He manages to untie himself and lunges at Nurgle, but is incapacitated by Jafar guarding his master. Both Marcus Ferre and Ninian get sent to another room while the preparations are underway. Back to our army, a paladin minion comes at us just to nag and taunt before going back to his position. Charming guy. This map can be a bit challenging due to the narrow corridors and some enemies are promoted here. Matthews or keys are pretty much required to proceed, but a couple enemies will drop them so you can pick them up as you go. If you got the unlock staff from a couple chapters ago, it can be of use here and will net more experience than healing for a little boost to your healer. As you move up, you'll notice that there's 3 ways you can go. I recommend sending some units, including Eliwood or Lynn, to the right to intercept a thief that will spawn at the top left, but will move to the chests to the right. This thief can be recruited, hence why you should send a lord other than Hector to meet with him. That way, you'll be able to get all the chests rather quickly, so you can focus on enemies. Lego is an ex-Blackfang member who decided to turn on them because they don't hold the same values anymore. Compared to Matthew, he has a good sword arm and will likely do more damage than him. His stats are also well-rounded and has some more room to get better, so he's a good replacement for Matthew if the latter cannot keep up, and an excellent contender for the promotion to Assassin. Speaking of enemies, the paladin from earlier, Maxime, will move when you get in his range. You can use the forest tile close by to give you an edge. He wields a halberd and acts effective against cavalry, so send a sword unit and he'll never hit you. Look, there's not much to him. Eliwood has a field day with him if that can help you measure his worth or lack thereof. For the chests, the bottom left contains a brave bow, the top left ones have a Luna tome and a blue gem, and the rightmost ones contain a barrier staff and another guiding ring. To finish the chapter, you'll finally have to meet with Darren in combat. We finally caught up with him, but he's not done yet. Darren is now cornered and will fight like 10 men to save himself. His armor must be enchanted also, since he takes very little magic damage. Nevertheless, he's still in armor, so any weapon strong against knights will be useful. Don't take him lightly, as he can be quite dodgy, and while his speed is not his best stat, he has enough to prevent some double attacks on your part. In the end, Eliwood ends their mad schemes with a nice crit. The lords take a moment to pick themselves up after the madman's demise, but there's no time to lose. Albert lies close. Further in, Eliwood shouts to find his father. It takes some time, but we finally find him closer to the gate. He seems fine, but there's no time for reunion. He tells us to take Ninian, who is also with him, and escape. He says she's the key to the Dragon's Gate, but when we try to take her and leave, she does not respond. There's no time. We must take them both by force and get out of here. Unfortunately, our escape path gets blocked by Jafar, who Albert wants us to not fight him, as he is very dangerous. This gives Ephidel time to arrive on the scene to conduct the next events. He sends Jafar away with new orders before addressing us, saying we're going to assist to a show, implying he intends to use Ninian and open the gate. However, not only is she used, Albert's life energy is also a piece of the ritual. Nurgle then appears, commanding Ninian to open the gate with Eliwood's father's life energy. Powerless, we assist to a terrible scene. The gate opens, and a dragon surges out of the gate. When all seems lost, Nils comes out of nowhere and manages to make Ninian come back to her senses. The now failed ritual shuts down the gate, and amidst the chaos we manage to get away. Nurgle retreats, disappointed of the result, letting Ephidel stuck with the dragon being sucked in the gate as well. After everything calms down, Nurgle reappears and demands the siblings to come back to him. While he's distracted, Albert lunges once again at him, successfully wounding him deeply, forcing the evil man to retreat a second time. Unfortunately, Eliwood's father has spent the last of his life force and won't be able to leave the island alive. And with a last message for his wife, Albert draws his last breath in the arm of his son. While Eliwood has successfully found his father alive, their reunion is short-lived as they departed the island with his lifeless body. Sailing back to the port is made in silence, our main lord spending the whole time holding his father's cold hand. At the inn, Lynn checks on Nils and Ninian, who seem fine after all. They were with Hector and Eliwood, where we learn that it was Albert who managed to give them a chance to escape in the dory we've picked up while on our way to the Dread Isle. Nils wasn't inside because he was thrown off during a storm and woke up back on Valor, where he hid in the ruins for a time. Putting the pieces back together, we realize we've brought Ninian right back in the enemy's clutches, as she is required to open the gate, the only thing Nurgle cannot do by himself. He can call the dragons, but that requires a great amount of quintessence, the term for a being's life energy. This power comes at a price, as anyone who has their quintessence extracted die as a result. That being said, the amount of essence varies depending on the power of the person's personal power. To find the most quintessence in the shortest amount of time, the best way to do so would be to start a war. This is related with Albert's disappearance, as it was Ephiel who brought him along with his knight on the island to extract their power, claiming they were loaded with it. Albert was spared as he had the most out of his group and would be useful for later. It's at this time he met with Niels and Ninian and was a source of hope and comfort for the moments they've spent together. Albert often talked about his family, a thing the pair enjoy hearing about. All this positive talk about his dad makes Eliwood become emotional, so Hector suggests everyone to let him alone for a bit, and so they leave him alone. Except for Ninian, who stayed behind. She feels responsible for Eliwood's pain, her power being the reason of all their hardships. He then tries to comfort her, but all of a sudden, she senses danger. Outside, Niels explains to Lynn and Hector how Nurgle can also heal himself with quintessence, making him go beyond his body's natural limits. But just as suddenly as his sister, Niels warns that danger approaches. Eliwood joins them, and together they make their preparations to meet the ambush. This is another Fog of War map, so be sure to take thieves or torches along. Ninian will also join you in this battle, being given Niels' power before coming aboard, meaning they will share their stats. She does pretty much the same thing as her brother, being a dancer instead of a bard, and you will be able to use certain skills if you find them to give you benefits for a short time instead of making you able to move again. You will get a free use of Nini's Grace on Eliwood, which grants additional defense and resistance until your next turn. This map is short. The boss is on the right, but be sure to visit the houses in the back to get a restore staff at the top one and a light rune at the bottom, while the top right house, a bit farther, grants an Elysian whip, and the one on the bottom nets you a worm slayer. There's also armories and shops if you need restocking, as well as an arena if you feel like gambling with your life. The enemy forces this time around will include many monks and wyvern riders to try and take you by surprise as you advance. Some enemies will wield poison weapons. While they do low damage, they have the ability to poison you, making you take some damage at the beginning of your phase for 5 turns. Use the restore staff you find on this map to heal the status, giving a nice boost to your staff user's XP at the same time. If you brought an archer, you could use the nearby ballista to easily dispatch the wyverns, but be careful as an enemy archer will do the same. This enemy will drop an antitoxin when defeated, so keep that in mind if your staff user isn't in the range of the affected unit. The boss will move when you get close enough, so use the forest tiles outside the gate to help lure him off. While he has the element of surprise on his side, Oleg isn't exactly a threat. He seems more intimidating because he's also surrounded with other enemies, so he won't be the only one to attack when you get in range. He has the bad habit of attacking you with a bow, which makes him a sitting duck for counterattacks. Up close, he'll use a silver axe that can shred anything he touches, if he touches his target. His skill and resistance are his main weakness. I managed to get a lucky sleep spell to work on him, and my army piled up. This battle makes Eliwood strengthen his resolve and decides to stop mourning and keep moving. He suggests that they visit Lord Uther in Ostia to tell him what is transpiring. Hector is reluctant as he did not keep in touch with his brother, and Eliwood knows that he's going to get into trouble. Despite everything, our heroes are still in good spirits. In another scene, Marcus tells Eliwood he took the liberty of sending a message to Lady Eleonora to inform about Lord Albert's demise. At this very moment, Isadora, Eleonora's personal guard, arrives to our group. She informs Eliwood that she has been instructed to help him fulfill his father's last wish as soon as the messenger delivered the news. It troubles Eliwood to know that his mother has few knights to protect her, so Marcus suggests to petition Ostia for some more troops to help defend FIRE. It's already our destination, so why not? The scene changes to Nurgle talking to his morph, stating that his recovery will take longer than expected. While the man who did this to him lies dead, he still wants revenge, so he orders Sonia to direct the Black Fang's attention towards Eliwood to take him out, while Limsta gathers more quintessence to help hasten his recovery. Our group travels for an undisclosed amount of time westward to Ostia, passing through many territories all the while. They travel unbothered until they reach a fortress on the Ostian border. The chapter starts with a Black Fang meeting with Sonia, Brendan, and the Ford Fangs, Jafar, Ursula, Lloyd, and Linus. She orders them all to go after Eliwood just like Nurgle ordered her. Jafar and Ursula accept without hesitation, but the brothers aren't on board yet as they want to confirm that this order also comes from their father Brendan. He says it does, but seems a bit out of it. Anyways, the order goes through and the Fang move out. In the meantime, our lords received word from Uther that they will meet at the fortress they are stationed in to avoid the spies in the big city, so they just have to stay put until he arrives. Not too far from there, Ninian is talking to Nils about how he seems distant. He doesn't have the time to reply and he falls unconscious. The lords approach when they hear Ninian's distress, and upon seeing Nils, Hector suggests to move him and call a healer, but Ninian refuses without elaborating, forcing us to accept her request. Bad news are incoming, as we have been tracked by the enemy. The commander orders his subordinate, Heath, to move to the western side of the fortress and attack the enemy from there. Heath protests, stating they have no reason to attack our group, but the commander retorts that they're being hunted because they rebelled from Ostia by Marcus Laws's order, so they will see that order through, because if they do, they might get the chance to join the Black Fang and stop being hunted. His subordinate refuses the order, as there are women and children in our midst, and he's not as cruel as to commit this kind of atrocity. His superior doubles down and blackmails Heath, forcing the Wyvern Rider to obey the command. Our group then get noticed we're under attack, and so we prepare to protect Nils, who cannot be moved under Ninian's request. We'll have to protect Nils for 11 turns. He can't be moved or rescued, so the room must be guarded. There will be chests on this map, so a thief is recommended. You will also have a couple green units that will help you, but they're downright bad, so don't expect much help from them. Their only use is to attract enemies towards attacking them instead of your units, so in other words, they're expendable meat shields and should be used as is. You're going to have Isadora join you on this map as well. She's a pre-promoted paladin who's pretty mid, honestly. Her Achilles heel is mainly her low HP and defense, and your current cavalier of choice will probably be better than her anyway. At the beginning of your second turn, another group of green units will appear to help you, with one familiar face amongst them. Wrath is back to help us and can be added back to our ranks by making him talk to Lyn. Another unit that can be recruited in this map is Heath. He's on the left side of the map and can be convinced to join our ranks if he talks with Eliwood. While he joins a bit at a low level, Heath is a great unit overall. With a bit of experience, he can get sturdy and fast, making him reliable while having exceptional movement range. If the Picasine Knights didn't make the cut for you, this one might do the trick. Use him to intercept the thief before he naps the chest from under your nose. The bottom one contains a brave axe, and the top one has 10,000 gold. With all those new units and resources, pushing back the enemies isn't much of an ordeal, and soon, you'll meet with the commander of the operation. Cubans will be the last obstacle to finish this battle. You can end the chapter early if you defeat him in battle, but it's optional. At this point, you should be on the verge of promoting your units if not done so already, and you should do soon because this boss will be tough to beat otherwise. Eubens is strong and sturdy, and can counterattack most opponents with his spear, the strongest throwing lance. Once again, Hector and his wolf bale can easily bail you out, but any axe user with high HP and speed can withstand his attacks. Isadora is also strong enough to help out, and any archer on a ballista can chip his HP. Upon defeat, Eubens will drop his spear, securing it for ourselves. We then meet with Uther, who has some funny words for his brother, pointing at his lack of communication. He was filled in by Layla's last report though, so he's almost up to date on information. He knows about Eliwood's father and Nurgle's infiltration of the Black Fang, and so we give him the missing detail that all of this is to bring back the dragons to our world. This put Uther in a tight spot, asking for some time to ponder on his new information. We decide to hold a meeting amongst ourselves while waiting, and we manage to reach the conclusion that our group are the only ones that really understands what's at stake, so we go back to Uther to announce that we'll take care of Nurgle ourselves. While he doesn't like the fact we're taking such a task on ourselves, he understands that there's no other option anyway. He at least takes the time to verify if we're all on the same page, and now that he's aware of her power, also asks Ninian if she can sense Nurgle. She can. She pinpoints his location, far to the east, meaning he's in Bern right now. If he manages to take control of the country, it will mean chaos on the continent, and this cannot come to pass. Nurgle is still recovering, so there's still time, so we set our sights on Bern as our next destination. However, Uther suggests to go to the other direction, Nabata Desert. It's not on our way, but he says we could find aid there and even meet a legend. The Nabata Desert is an unwelcome land to humans. As per Uther's suggestion though, we still make our way to the desert in hopes to meet the living legend he spoke of. Not too long after starting to cross the desert, Nils starts having trouble because of the heat. Hector suggests that he can help him, much to Nils' surprise. He always seen Hector as brash, so him offering help seems kind of left field. No matter, Hector insists due to Nils' last loss of consciousness and lifts in onto his shoulders, making quite an amusing scene. We then switch to Eliwood and Ninian, who says they were supposed to meet someone at the entrance of the desert, yet no one else is in sight. Seeing that she struggles a bit herself, Eliwood mentions that she can ask him for help, which bothers Ninian. She and her brother were mistreated because of their differences, yet no one in our group does so. Eliwood retorts that who he sees is Ninian, and it does not matter if she's a bit different. In his eyes, she is who she is, and he likes her as is. The scene shifts to some sort of ruin where an old man tells a woman that someone is coming. She asks if it's her partner, Pent, but it is not, as he is still searching the sands for something. Bandits are also on their way to him, but the woman is not fearful for his safety. The conversation continues until they mention us, travelers from Lycia, where the old man called Athos tells Louise the cogs of destiny are turning. He seems to know more than he lets on. Back to our group, Ninian mentions she sees the bandit homing on a single person, as the two previous characters mentioned, so we decide to jump in and help the man. The scene then changes to Pent being harassed by the two weird bandits, who are a recurring trope of the twin bandits boss that comes back in many Fire Emblem games. These ones are called Paul and Jasmine and are really weird. It seems they're after Pent's treasure, but when he refuses to give them, they get all offended and decide to attack. This is a special map full of sand and is especially difficult for units on horseback or in armor to cross. Bring magic units and flyers as they are not affected by the movement restrictions. Bring a thief as well, there's many items you can find in the sand, and while any unit can find them, the chance to get the items depend on their luck stat, where a thief is always 100% sure to find the item. If you bring Canis in your lineup, he will hint that items are scattered throughout the sands as well. The mission will be to defeat all the enemies on the map. You're going to face many mages and flyers, so take that in consideration. There will also be 2 bosses to beat and one is right in your face. They're quite the same, but I'll cover them both separately when we'll get to them. For now, focus on getting to Pent, but not because he's going to have a bad time. On the contrary, he will destroy the enemy. If you want to keep some experience for yourself, you could send a flyer and rescue him. That can resolve the problem. Another reason you should do so is because there's a Harken Chapter available, and the condition to get it is to get at least 700 experience with all your units, so leaving Penta alone could lock you out of the extra chapter should he tank the bandits. The boss in front of you, Jasmine, will move in to attack if you get too close, so use this behavior to lure him closer to the rest of your allies to dunk on him, which should be done on your second turn to ease the pressure. Just before covering the boss, at the beginning of your second turn, another green unit will appear down the bottom right. This is the person that we were supposed to meet, and you can talk to him with Eliwood to make him join your army. I'll cover the boss, I'll get to Hawkeye later. Jasmine will be in your face, ready to attack the moment you move. With his HP, strength, and speed, he's going to be a thorn early in the chapter. Yet, you can still gang up on him due to his low defense and difficulty to hit sword units. In my game, I used Rebecca and the Brave Bow to deal huge damage and finish the job with Lynn. If the fight must drag on 2 turns, try to use the scent to your advantage so Jasmine cannot reach your more vulnerable units. Then there's Hawkeye. He's a promoted berserker with a unique sprite, which makes him quite the character. He comes equipped with the killer axe, a nice complement to his natural high crit chance. He is a good unit to add to your roster, but since you have so much choice for axemen, there's not much empty space for him to fill. Reinforcements will start appearing by the 3rd turn, being Wyvern Knights and Mages, but apart from that, the only real objective left are to find the treasures scattered throughout the map and then fight Paul. For the items to find, I've added the map with the item locations, but the most important ones to get are Phila's Might and the Body Ring, which gives +2 to any unit's constitution. If you're training Dart, I suggest you get the Ocean Seal as well. The rest is up to you to get or not, as they're either obtainable later or more situational items. Once you've found the items of your liking, there's only Paul left to beat. Unlike Jasmine, Paul only has a killer axe on him. He's also a bit slower but stronger than his twin. Lure him with a sword unit and pelt him with distant attacks to win easily. Otherwise, you could also take advantage of the nearby forts to boost your chance to avoid his attacks. After the bandits were driven away, we meet with Pent, who chuckles when Eliwood mentions we're here to see the living legends. Seems like he was going this way as well, so along with Hawkeye, we go to their living quarters. That is, if we didn't accept the Harken Chapter, because if so, we'll fall into a sand pit, into a forgotten ruin. Eliwood wakes up in the weird structure separated from his group. He's at least with Pent and Hawkeye, the latter not recognizing the ruin despite being the defender of the desert. Nils is also with them, and he confirms our allies are near, thankfully. The air is heavy, but it is a familiar heaviness. We've already felt like this in the past. By Eliwood's description, Pent realizes that this feeling comes from a magic seal, and this area seems to be his domain. Suddenly, Nils senses more enemies appearing, and strong ones as well. seems like a fight will be unavoidable. This is a special map. You can only choose 9 units to come with Eliwood and Hawkeye. There are chests to open, but I would suggest letting your thief on the bench in favor of door and chest keys. That way, you will have one more spot open for a stronger unit. Also, if you check your augury, this is the chapter where the fortune teller will call it quits and let her place to Nils instead, who will do it for free. Once you start, your team will be separated in 2 groups, both having to go their own way to regroup. The field will be separated by 3x3 square rooms, some with breakable doors and others with a pre-promoted enemy in them. There aren't many of them, but they're all intimidating, so careful advance is recommended. Then again, most magic enemies won't be able to attack you because of the magic seal, which makes it counterintuitive. Why call magic units when they cannot help you? That said, the melee units are where the real danger lies. They're well equipped and can hurt your team easily. Keep making your way to the middle room, nabbing the chests along the way, containing a berserk staff in the bottom right, a secret book in the one closest to the boss, and a silver blade in the bottom left. Now, when you open the door to the boss, he will teleport away and let 4 new enemies come in, making this chapter a bossless one. The air returns to normal once the boss has fled, leaving more questions than answers. While Pant and Hawkeye does not answer Eliwood's interrogations, Ninian comes in the scene responding in a trance that the magic seal is an unnatural being. With this, Hawkeye seems to understand who Ninian is, also letting us know that both him and Pant seems to know more than they let on. A bit of time passes, and we finally meet with the living legend, who calls us children of Roland. He presents himself as the Archsage Athos, which means he is one of the heroes of the Scouring, making him truly a living legend. Yes, he managed to live 1,000 years and still is living to this day. His answer as to why is a bit cryptic, but everyone shrugs it off and we keep on. He knows we're here to stop Nurgle and thus gives us more information about the man. He's just like Athos, a man who transcended his mortal body and gathered fearsome power by way of dark magic. We won't be able to defeat him with normal means, but there is a possibility available. The trial will be very difficult to overcome, to the point that we might regret our decision later down the road. Seeing our unwavering resolve, despite the weight of his words, Athos accepts to reveal that the solution lies in the Shrine of Seals located in Bern. He also asks Hawkeye to accompany us for the rest of our mission. Learning our story, Pant decides to present himself properly, revealing that he is the Mage General of Etruria, the country of magic, so he's a big cheese. The reason he and Louise are here is because they were invited to the coronation of the next king of Bern that will be soon, and he thought he had some time to pass by the desert to find an ancient artifact, probably to give it as a gift to the future king. Nevertheless, they decide to join us as well, seeing we're going at the same place. Athos asks that we gather at the main plaza to teleport us to Lycia to help us reach our destination, but before doing so, he gives our character an item called Aphidrops, which does not tell you outright what it does, but I will tell you. It slightly upgrades the stat growth of one of your characters, so give it to someone you like, as the description says. Then, we're sent back to FIRE, much to the surprise of Eliwood's mother, who was praying for his safety at the same time. She insists they stay at least for the night before taking the road again. Eliwood initially refuses since they're pressed for time, but relents when Hector and Lynn insist as well. Chapter 23 starts with a bit of lore about Bern. It's the mightiest nation along with Ostia and always has been in good terms with the Lycian League until recently when the king started flaunting his army and limits the passing through its borders, especially towards Lycian nobles. We disguise ourselves as travelers to enter the country anonymously. Eliwood inquires to Hawkeye about the Shrine of Seals, but he answers its location isn't known by anyone except the royal family, so we'll have to contact them somehow. Pent, due to his status and connection, had been aware of the shrine already, but couldn't manage to pinpoint the location as Byrne's defenses are tough to get through, meaning that we can't go there unannounced, or this act would be taken as an excuse to invade Lycia, so we must be careful with our approach. Fortunately, Pent says that because of some obligations, he must assist to some events before the ceremony, and he'll have the opportunity to meet with the Queen, who is a distant relative to Louise, so they'll have the chance to get some more information on the shrine. Talk about convenient. Before separating, Hawkeye stops Pent to give him a special item he was entrusted to give to Eliwood at the right time, but he does not know what that means, so he asks Pent to do it in his stead. It's a seal that lets our lord promote to their better classes, and I'd like to get it now, please. Oh, okay then. We get a scene with the Reed brothers and a small green-haired child, who is revealed to be Sonia's daughter. We'll see her again in the chapter, so keep her in mind. While our lords wait for Pent to return, Lagos suggests to gather information on the Black Fang. Being a former member, he knows their HQ lies in Byrne, but not where exactly, so information gathering could be helpful as well as pass the time. We split up, but close to our location, we are spied on by the Reed brothers, who are surprised to see us here, as last report they had was telling that our group were in Nabata Desert. No matter, Lloyd decides to take us on, asking Linus to go report to HQ and come back with reinforcements. We then get taunted by the Black Fang and prepare to strike back at them. This chapter is special as there's a condition to determine which of the brothers you'll have to face and on which map, which depends on your 3 lords level. If their total's under 50, you'll face Lloyd, but if they're over 50, you'll face Linus on a different map altogether. It also determines the new units you'll get, as each route holds a different character to recruit. So for this battle, we'll face Lloyd, and I'll get to the Linus route later. This will be another Fog of War map. Bring a thief and torches as usual. Right at the beginning, Wallace will appear as a green unit. You can recruit him by sending most units that were on Lynn's route to talk to him. He'll be at the same level he left after Chapter 10, so that means most of your units will have caught up with him, so he's not extra useful. You should break the snag at the bottom of the map to quickly reach the armories, shops and the village, who will give you an Earth Seal, an item that you can use to promote any character except your lords, thieves and Dart, as the Ocean Seal is the only promotional item that he can use. Check out the arena close to your starting point if you need some quick experience, and / or have that wish. Wallace will attack everything north of him, so quickly get to him before magic enemies do. At the beginning of the second turn, the scene will play out with the child who meets Jafar in a house nearby. The errand she had to make was to give him his next target, but upon delivering the letter, she notices that Jafar is bleeding profusely and he loses consciousness, forcing the girl to take care of him. You can check on her if you visit the house, but she'll chase you away. In terms of enemies, there will be a lot of them, with a good mix of physical, magical and ranged attacks. The 2 ballistas on the map will also be helpful if you brought an archer. There's also another village to visit at the top right, giving you a silent staff so you can shut up magic casters. Carefully push the forces back, but be advised they'll get more aggressive as you approach the temple, where the boss will wait for you. Lloyd is a menace. While he won't move, he's a demon up close. He's fast, he's accurate, and he has a high crit rate. best way to deal with him is to attack from afar, because even generals can be easily defeated if Lloyd starts critting away. While you'll fight him, he will get some reinforcements right on him and also at the bottom of the map, so clear the chapter quickly if you want to avoid the pincer attack. Being on the back foot, Lloyd seems to be in a bad spot. Eliwood lowers his guard seeing his opponent has been defeated, but in a twist, he manages to capture Eliwood as a hostage, saying he'll deal with us quickly and lets the rest of us go. This rings very close to Yuhai's words back on Valor, Eliwood stating that both our opponents share the same sense of honor. Hearing this, Lloyd lets him go and promises our group he won't attack us again until he gets some answers from the Black Fang. Before departing, he warns us to be careful of Sonia, and then we separate. Despite Eliwood's reckless action, it was fruitful in the end, as they could confirm that not everybody in the Black Fang are enemies, so there may be hope to resolve this conflict without fighting in the end. Hector does not seem to like this conclusion, but we don't know why exactly yet. Thus, we go back to camp. Back to Lloyd, he confirms that his suspicions about Sonia were right. Their targets are not as bad as he was described. He decides to confront her, but suddenly, Lemstella appears and manages to steal his quintessence, leaving him dead in the process. Linus comes back shortly after to find his brother unalive, and swears he will take revenge against us. At the same time, another scene plays out where Jafar wakes up with Nino watching over him. He scolds her as Black Fang law states that they must kill the weak to preserve the strong. Nursing Jafar goes directly against the law, which makes Nino feel terrible as her emotions go against the creed. Jafar tries to leave but is too weak. His wound reopens and falls back out of consciousness, much to Nino's distress. We then assist yet to another scene, this time at Burn Castle, where the king comes to meet the queen. He has no words to say to her, only asking to summon the prince, but he's away practicing falconry, much to the king's annoyance. It seems that Zephiel's succession is a matter of bickering amongst the royal family, as the king talks rudely to his queen while she answers him with contempt. We learn that the king has sent the queen and the prince to live in a manse outside the castle, while the king stays at said castle with the mistress who bore him a princess. These events created a rift in the family to the point that the king willingly sabotaged the upcoming ceremony by letting the sacred treasure, the Fire Emblem, get stolen. Without it, the ceremony cannot come to pass and Zephiel won't be recognized as the rightful heir to the throne. All of this just because the king is jealous of his own son who excels at everything while he did not. With that said, he leaves, leaving his queen in despair. Shortly thereafter, Louise arrives at the manse as expected, and as she greets Helene, she notices something is wrong. It turns out her despair is our opportunity as the queen reveals the situation to the couple. Later that evening, Pent and Louise comes back to our group to announce that we've got a mission to perform, and if we succeed, the queen will hear our plea. As of now, we're involved in Byrne's royal family business. Our mission? Retrieve the Fire Emblem. To find clues to what happened, we start by the royal palace in hopes to discover a trail. The trek to the palace was a challenging one, seeing it was built in the mountains. This gives an advantage to their wyvern riders, as mountains aren't a problem for these overgrown lizards. This really puts the question of how could someone manage to steal such an important treasure from such an impregnable fortress? Seems like there's more to it than it appears, thus we sneak in the castle. Our lords enter the inner garden and hide in a nearby bush, seeing that there's some people there. They assist to a touching scene between Zephiel and his half-sister Guinevere, who look very close to each other despite their parents' quarrel. The king then comes into the picture, being delighted to see his daughter. He then realizes that his son is also here, and his expression suddenly becomes stern and irritated. He just dropped by the castle to gift his sister a baby fox he happened to capture while hunting, much to Guinevere's delight. She goes to play with it while the men talk. Desmond scolds Zephiel and tells him not to come to the castle anymore and tells him to leave. While alone, the king ponders on why he gets so upset anytime Zephiel comes by, and he seems to have second thoughts about his attitude, but at the same time, Sonia appears. We then learn that the king was behind the Fire Emblem's theft all along, putting Sonia on the job. He also has another job for her. Their exchange reveals that Desmond also demanded the assassination of his own son to ensure he'll never get the throne. The only problem is Murdoch, Zephiel's retainer, who could put the plan in jeopardy. But Desmond tells Sonia that he'll think of an errand he'll have to fulfill at the right moment. Suddenly, Sonia feels like she's watched, but it's only Guinevere who's trying to find his brother to play. When the girl learns he went away, she asks her father to hold the fox so she can catch him before he goes too far. Desmond, stuck with the kit, demands his soldier to kill the animal out of jealousy, seeing the fox as a way for Zephiel to steal his daughter's affection. Douchebag. Our lords, having heard everything, realizes that the Black Fang has set their sights on Bern after Alicia's upheaval failed. With all that info gathered, we confirm that our next destination will be the Black Fang's headquarters. While this happens, the scene goes to Ninian and Nils. The latter is annoyed at his sister, as all she talks about is if Lord Eliwood is okay and when he will return. Nils senses that Ninian is falling in love with the Lord, but warns her not to because of their differences. The trio comes back outside just at the same moment that a group of Wyvern riders closes in on Nils. He couldn't sense them, so something is wrong, especially with the leader. She tells Nils to call our group quickly as she wants to test our strength before delivering Nils back to Nurgle. We manage to reach the boy in time, and the woman gets excited at the prospect to crush us before fulfilling her mission. We also learn that while she's contracted with the Black Fang, her only allegiance lies with Bern, which is a bit confusing to hear. Nevertheless, enemy forces appear, forcing us to take arms and defend ourselves. There's an exploit we can use on this map to make this chapter and the rest of the game a bit easier. Take the mine with you, it'll be required to pull off the trick. In this map, main characters will be separated from your army, and you'll have to make both groups join together to stay safe. Wyverns are coming for you, however, so you need to be careful with your movement. You see, the Wyvern Lord Vida has an enhanced spear that boosts all her stats, making her almost unbeatable in normal conditions. The cool thing is that, with the exploit, you can steal it from her and gain the stats boost for yourself. Before getting to it, Pent and Louise will join our lords to give them a bit of bulk, as well as giving you your first Heaven Seal to upgrade either Lyn or Hector. Pent is a great magic unit that can be used if your mages did not hold up to your standards. While his growths are tame, his bases are enough for him to stay useful until the end. Louise, on the other hand, is a good sniper but doesn't hold up as well as Pent. They also come with an A support together, so if you choose to include them both in your lineup, be sure to keep them close to each other, as the bonus their relationship gives is mighty nice. Alright, now for the mind trick. Here's how to do it. First, you'll have to set up. See the shaman on the left of the wyverns? This guy drops an item, so he's going to be an important part of the trick. Put the mine in anyone's inventory, it does not matter who, as long as it's used. On your turn, place the mine on a tile you're sure to be attacked. On the enemy turn, when the opponent steps on the mine, reset your console and resume the battle. The game will resume with the mine's animation, and if done right, you'll get control of the enemy turn. Select Vida and make her give the spear to the shaman, and be sure to either drop his tome or ensure the spear is in the second slot. Take care to disarm all the other available enemies if you want and end the turn. It'll go back to your army, defeat the shaman, and you'll get a sweet new weapon. Keep in mind that it only has 15 uses before breaking, so use it in moderation until the end game. Now for the map. If you've done the trick, it's a free XP chapter, so take this opportunity to boost your weaker units if needed. If you decide to take on the challenge, watch out for Vida's movement, and know that most enemies are well equipped, especially the mages, and you'll be attacked from every side while bandits run rampant, threatening the village on the bottom left. If you manage to reach it, you'll get a hammer staff from Ursula, a staff that recovers any weapon's durability, a nice complement to the spear we've just got. It only has 3 charges and requires an A rank in staves to use it, but it's worth its weight. Wyvern reinforcements will start to appear by the end of the battle at the top of the map, and there will be a lot of them, so be sure to have moved your lords out of the way before then. After 11 turns, Vida will fly off and let us live. The victory is bittersweet, as both children warns us that Nurgle is fast recovering. The proof is that Vida's power was in part given by Nurgle, so that confirms he's regaining his strength. We have to move quickly, but the way's unclear. Lynn suggests tracking down the enemy, as they might be going back to Blackfang HQ, so we give chase. We give chase to the soldiers and the trail leads us south in the snowy mountains. After a tough climb, a great castle stands in the distance. The chapter starts with Vida and Sonia, the former having failed her mission. She begs for another chance, much to Sonia's amusement. She refuses Vida's request, but spares her from death as she's not a true Blackfang member. With this, the Wyvern Rider leaves the castle. Our group sees her fly away, confirming we're at the right place. Hearing voices in the distance, the lords decide to investigate. We eavesdrop on Sonia talking to Nino, giving her a mission of great importance. Brendan steps in, saying the mission is too much for her, but when Sonia tells him that his sons are nowhere to be found, he relents as there's no one else available. The man leaves and Sonia summons Jafar, giving him the task of accompanying Nino to assassinate Zephiel. Both are astonished at this order, but Sonia retorts that the king must be under their debt. With that, they depart to investigate the premises where the mission will take place. Before departing, she entrusts the guard of the Fire Emblem to Germ, who will act as the boss for the chapter. The Lord realized that even if they retrieve the Fire Emblem, it won't do any good if the prince isn't alive, so they quickly change plans and go back to the group to announce the new plan. They're ambushed by Germ, however, who locks them in the area with magic, forcing us to fight before being able to chase Sonia. This is another special map that will change depending on the number of experience gained by certain units. If the total experience gained by Guy, Dorcas, Barter, and Raven is higher than the experience gained by Lucius, Sarah, Urk, and Priscilla, you'll get this map, and the opposite will put you on another map with another boss. There's also another thing that's special in this chapter. You'll be able to recruit one of 2 characters that will appear on the battlefield on the 10th turn, the condition depending on the number of doors or promoted enemies you defeated before then. If you opened 4 or more doors or defeated 2 promoted enemies, Carol will appear. If the condition hasn't been met, another unit will appear that I will cover later. Additionally, the promoted enemies that can fulfill the condition are the ones inside the buildings, not the ones outside. Now for the map. As you must have guessed, you'll have to open the many doors to defeat all enemies and find the boss who hides in one of the rooms. A snowstorm will also happen during the map, slowing you down just like the rain in earlier chapters. As for the enemies, there's going to be a lot of archers and wyverns, so keep your flyers close to the rest of the group. Many enemies will also be equipped with reaver weapons, so be sure to check them before engaging the enemy. The building closest to our starting position only have axe enemies in it. The one in the middle contains 2 chests that will give you a white gem and a bolting tome. The big upper left building contains archers and a chest that holds a talisman. The middle right one has mercenaries. The bottom one contains knights with a chest holding a hero crest. And finally, the boss hides in the upper right building. At the 10th turn, Carol appears as a green unit because I opened more than 4 doors before the time limit. He's recruitable by making him talk to Eliwood. Carol, also known as the Sword Demon, is a strong late-game unit. He comes equipped with a Wo Dao, an upgraded version of the Killer Sword. He can be a good choice if you like any strong sword units. He's also quite a sinister character though, wanting to kill anyone who he deems worthy of a fight. With all of that done, there's only the boss to take care of. Germ is the first actual assassin we'll have to fight in battle. Normally, they have a unique skill that can kill any unit if activated. Its activation rate depends on the crit chance, but since Germ has a light brand equipped, which cannot crit at long range, his weapon prevents him from using his skill, thankfully. He will attack with magic at long range, hence why he can damage Oswin. That being said, he's nimble and will be able to avoid a lot of attacks, and while he's not the most solid boss, the other sword units with him might give you some trouble since they wield lance reavers to cover the boss's weakness. After a well-fought battle, we find the fire emblem on Germ's body, so it saves us the trouble at least. We must not waste any more time, so we depart for the prince's manse to prevent his assassination. The scene then changes to Sonia, who instructs Nino and Jafar on the mission. Nino is hesitant and asks to hold Sonia's hand at least this once, since she might not be back. The mother declines but promises her daughter that she will display more affection if Nino succeeds lighting a fire in the child's heart. Sonia holds Jafar to talk to him in private and tells him to kill Nino once the contract is fulfilled. While this demand astonishes the assassin, who's normally cold and composed, Sonia explains that she despises Nino, and anyway, they'll need a scapegoat when burned soldiers will find the prince's corpse. This is Nino's true mission, to die as a scapegoat. We are on the tail of the assassins in hope to prevent the impending disaster. Jumping right before the fateful moment, Nino tries to still her nerves, seeing as it's her first real mission. Jafar is annoyed with her and stays cold, knowing what will come next. The way is clear thanks to the king's machinations, so they approach the door to their target, but before unlocking it, they hear a prayer. The prayer of a prince desperate for his father's acceptance. A plea to reunite his broken family. This destabilizes Nino, but before she can say a thing, Jafar enters the room and incapacitates Zephiel, telling Nino to deal the crucial blow. However, she can't. She can't because the prince is the same as her, a child trying their best to be accepted by their parent. This unnerves Jafar, but Nino tells him to do his thing. She knows why she's here, and she has accepted her fate. In a sudden change of heart, Jafar decides to abandon his orders and escorts the girl out of the palace, knowing full well the consequences of his acts. They get cornered by Ursula, who was ordered to supervise the mission because of Jafar's odd behavior. At first, she doesn't suspect a thing, but when Nino comes into the picture, Ursula realizes Jafar was going to betray the Black Fang, so she quickly takes the matters in her hands and prevents the two fugitives from escaping. The assassin takes Nino a bit farther back before going to confront the enemy alone. Our group arrives at this moment and we immediately notice the doused lights, so we know things are underway and we prepare to jump in the fray. Merlin has promoted himself on this chapter, becoming a carriage able to move and follow us. Now, this is going to be a rough chapter. At the hard difficulty, this map can be considered unfair because of the frailty of the green units and the amount of enemy forces they have to face before we can reach them. I'm playing on normal, so it's not my problem, thankfully. Still, it's a challenging one nonetheless, so prepare accordingly. There's fog of war, so thieves and torches are recommended. Your main objective is to protect Zephiel, but there's a hidden second objective that requires you to save Nino and make her talk to Jafar before the end of the map, which is easier said than done. There are 2 entrances you can go, and I like to split my army in 2 and push both sides at the same time, as it helps rescuing both Nino and Jafar, letting them reach each other more quickly. Push forward as much as you can. Use your stronger units to carve their way to the bottom of the map, but beware the promoted units as they're strong and might catch you off guard. Nino is easier to reach as she will mind her own business and wait for you to arrive, but Jafar is dumb and may put himself in a bad spot because he wanted to kill that inoffensive archer. Once you're down there, if he did not kill the mini-boss Maxime, he will come at you, but he's not worth a mention since he's on par with the other promoted units on the map. He just has a name and a portrait. Once you reach Nino with Eliwood, he'll tell her the truth about the Black Fang and Sonia, and he invites her to join our side. Nino is the late weak unit, but with excellent growth. She's tough to train, but you will likely be rewarded if you decide to do so. You could even give her the Alpha drops acquired earlier and give it to her to make Nino even more likely to become a great unit. However, the amount of effort you have to put in is huge and it's not guaranteed your efforts will be rewarded, so train her at your own discretion. Another reason to get down quickly are the chests. They have valuable items, but the enemy thieves will mostly get to them before you, so you'll have to find a way to corner them and steal the treasures back. The chests on the right have a Delphi shield, an item that negates the effect on bows on flying units, and a rescue staff, while the chests on the left contains a pair of boots, the most broken stat boost item, as it gives +2 movement to a unit and a brave lance. As you move further down, you'll likely be attacked by Ursula, who has a long-range magic tome. This might make reuniting Nino and Jafar more difficult, but that also means that she'll be vulnerable if we find her. She's down the bottom left and will move as you get in her sights, but will always target the character with the lowest resistance, so she might reveal herself to you. If she does, you'll have no problem dealing with her. Since we managed to reunite Jafar and Nino, we'll be able to access the Gaiden chapter, which is the conclusion of the pair's sub-story. We managed to save the prince's life and the turncoats as well, who changed for the better. Jafar questions why they didn't kill him, and we reply that he didn't take the prince's life, so we won't take his. This doesn't sit well with Hector, and understandably so, as he is Layla's killer. Nevertheless, seeing as it's Nino's wish, Jafar adds his blade to ours. Not too far, Limstella appears at Ursula's corpse, extracting the quintessence within as she was ordered. At dawn, Murdoch comes back to the palace being detained for no reason when he sees the mess the place is in. The prince is safe at least, thanks to our efforts. Our group meets with the queen seeing as they've fulfilled their part of the bargain, so they have now the right to know about the path to the Shrine of Seals. Eliwood notices that Helene seems not to care for the events that just happened, being solely focused on the emblem and the ceremony, and he asks her a crucial question. What is the prince's worth to her? This question angers the queen, but he does not relent. Seeing she has no clue of what happened and her behavior towards recovering her tool, Eliwood decides to leave, disgusted by what he has seen. Murdoch enters right after us and delivers the truth to Helene. Back outside, Eliwood apologizes to Pent and Louise, having wasted the opportunity they worked so hard to give us. They didn't take any offense as they agreed with us, seeing how the queen has changed since she's been married to Byrne's royalty. We decide to find another solution when we're stopped by Helene herself, providing us with a seal and a book. The book contains the way to the shrine, while the seal is a heaven seal to promote the lord you haven't yet. As an added bonus, all of Byrne's soldier will not move during 3 days, letting us travel to the shrine without resistance. When we ask her why she goes out of her way to give us the rewards, she tells us that it's not her thanks as a queen but as a mother, having now realized we've saved her son from the attempted assassination. She goes back to Zephiel and tries to make amends, promising him she'll try to reunite with his father to be a family once again. This is quite a sad scene if you know the events of Fire Emblem 6, as this won't come to pass. Before continuing our journey, we'll finish Nino and Jafar's sub-story as mentioned. Jafar spots Nino trying to leave somewhere in the middle of the night, knowing she wants to find Sonia. She thinks she knows where she's hiding, and she wants to hear the truth from her mouth. The girl thinks she's still her flesh and blood, so she needs specific closure to be able to move on. While he can't understand, Jafar accepts to let Nino go as long as he goes with her. Not too far behind, our lords were assisting the scene, Lyn having seen Nino trying to slip away, so they decide to follow them as well, except Hector. He's conflicted because of Jafar. He can't let go that he killed his friends and soldiers. He can't see it the way Eliwood and Lyn can. They've seen that Jafar on Valor and Jafar now are two different people, and the way he acts around with Nino proves it. Nurgle is an evil man who will twist anyone to his desires, but that doesn't mean they're bad people at heart. In the end, Hector agrees to help him live, but so he can keep suffering by atoning for his sins. He then takes a breather, apologizes for the rant, and so we move on. At the hideout, Limstella talks with Sonia about how to deal with Eliwood, seeing as he's still alive. Brandon interrupts the conversation at a seemingly bad time as he looks like he never met Limstella before. Sonia then takes advantage of the moment to reveal to Brandon how she puppeteered him into giving her access to the Black Fang, replacing his subject by hers over time. Brandon snaps and attacks her but is no match for his opponent and collapses, letting Limstella gather his quintessence to bring back to Nurgle. Jan, who is Brandon's relative, sees the scene and escapes, bumping into Nino and Jafar at the same time. Before he can tell them, Sonia appears before them. This makes Jan flee in terror, giving Nino finally the opportunity to ask for the truth, and the truth she gets. Sonia reveals everything. How Nino was a child to a family of mages guarding the secret of the dragons. How Sonia killed all of her family members only to keep her because Nurgle thought she could be of use. How Sonia had to play the mother and despising every moment of it. This reveals to Jafar why he had to kill Nino the night of the mission, just because she was a bother to her in the end. All of this made him realize he cares about Nino just as much as she cares for him, and so decides to take on Sonia. In the nick of time, our group arrives to support the pair, much to Sonia's delight, as she will be able to deal with every thorn at Nurgle's side at the same time. The walls tremble and the pathways submerge, giving us no ways to cross. Our opponent states that she will reveal the path gradually, so she can toy with us before sealing the deal. With that, she retreats. This is another tough map. Where the previous one was difficult, this one is regarded as unfair, seeing as pathways won't only spawn but despawn as well, leaving your units unable to move in the worst conditions. Flyers and Dart are recommended to bring along as they can move over water or in it in Dart's case. They can help with both reducing enemy numbers and with positioning, leaving less characters on the limited pathways. The Delphi shield will come in handy in this mission, letting your selected flyer able to take on the archers and move without weaknesses. What makes it more difficult is that Nino is required in this battle. Since she's low level, it can be a challenge to keep her out of harm's way, but this can be a great opportunity to level her up if you let her deal the killing blows on enemies using Ninian to make her move twice in a turn. It's risky, but it can pay off quite well. Additionally, Jafar will be playable from this point on. He's usable and good right out of the gates, but his defenses are quite low, so keep an eye on him. You'll be able to harness his silencer ability, which is good in certain conditions, but may put unwanted pressure on this unit. If you decide to use him, he will work the same way your thieves do, seeing through fog and opening chests with a lockpick, so paired with his high offense, Jafar can be quite useful for the next couple chapters. Follow the path as they appear, taking note of the staircases, as reinforcements will appear often at many places at once. Wyverns and pirates will strike you fast, and they can have poison weapons. One specific enemy must be watched out for. Midway through, a bishop with a berserk staff will try to turn one of our units against us. Either deal with him quickly or bring a restore staff to heal the affected unit. He only has 3 tries, so it's not too bad, but it can send anyone unprepared into chaos. As you move forward, enemies will spawn and path will despawn, forcing you to leave some units behind either because they can follow or keep reinforcements at bay. Eventually, paths will also split in many ways, letting even more enemies able to reach you, so stay alert. As you move towards Sonia, you'll notice that she can attack you from a distance, thanks to her bolting tone, so be careful not to put yourself in a bad spot. I recommend letting her waste it, but it is possible to force your way through before she can use it all. There are also chests to open. The one alone contains speed wings, while the trio up top, reachable much later, will give you a recover staff, an upgrade to the main one, another of Ninian's ring called Thor's Ire, this one giving more crit chance to a unit, and a Fenrir, a tough to use dark magic tome. Now, onto the boss. Sonia will want you dead. Good thing, because we feel the same way about her. She has a strong tome up close and enough speed to balance the weight of her weapon somewhat. The Luna tome that ignore resistance can be quite useful against her, but she's still a magic user with low defense, and Jafar just has a field day reducing her to nothing. We can pick up a failed contract upon her defeat, a promotional item that can change a thief into an assassin. Once Sonia is no more, Jan comes out of hiding and tells her Brandon's last moments. She also reveals that even if it didn't seem like it, the commander had some doubts about Sonia, and he investigated her past, revealing he was aware about Nino's family. Not only that, but Jan also got into contact with one of her family's servants, who gave him a pendant to give to Nino once the time would be right. Despite not being a true member of the Black Fang, she loved the environment she was in and had great moments with their members. She and Jafar will now travel with us, Nino having found another group she can rely on. One last scene plays between Limstella and a dying Sonia, the former stating how puppets have no essence to extract, proving Sonia was just another tool for her master to use. We resume our march to the shrine with new allies, our way unimpeded as promised. The way is known by only the royals, yet no one stands in our way as we approach the sacred grounds. Although the way to the shrine is seldom known, Linus is already there, ready to ambush us as a scout confirms our approach. They come to threaten us, but Nino recognizes them and wants to talk with them, only to be stopped by Jafar, who reminds her they were never real Black Fangs. We must meet on the field if we want to move forward, and our opponents will resist us until they're no more. This map will be a long one full of strong opponents. Bring your best and be ready to push back. You'll be able to bring a lot of units at least. The battlefield is huge and you'll have to split your forces to meet the enemy. The biggest concentration will happen in the middle of the map between the two mountains, as a lot of knights and cavaliers will spawn nearby, flooding the narrow space, but you can create a choke point to keep the opponents at bay. The path leading to the bottom left village will give you a warp staff when you visit it, but the path leading to it will have some resistance as well as ballistic. The rightmost path that leads to the top is the easier way across, and if you're quick enough, the units you send that way can help reduce the number of enemies that will throw themselves at the choke points by going around it. During the battle, Vida, the Wyvern Rider from Chapter 24, will spawn as an enemy back where you started, but you can talk to her with Eliwood to make her fight alongside you. Note that her minion will not be swayed, so you'll have to get rid of the many reinforcements she brings. The reason why she decides to fight with us is because her true allegiance lies with the Prince of Bern. Since she learned we are responsible for saving his life, she joins us as a way to thank Eliwood without saying it outright. Vida is feisty, she's strong and is a great addition to the ranks, even if she's a bit late to the party. If you got a place for another flyer but no one to use, Vida is a great filler and can serve until the endgame. Enemies will keep spawning even after we arrive at the temple, but the boss is in front of us and it's time to take care of him. Linus waits for you with rage in his heart. He does not know the truth, but at this point, it does not matter to him anymore. His brother lies dead and so is his father. The group he was part in is no more, so he has nothing more to lose. You can try to reason with him with Eliwood, Hector, Lego, Nino or Jafar, but no one will be able to subdue his rage. He will fight with the light brand, so no crits, but he also has an iron rune, an item that negates crits made on him as well. His stats are high, but his main weakness is the weapon he uses, which limits him a lot even if he can attack from afar. It's a shame, but the Mad Dog must be put down. While we were the victor, there's no reason to celebrate, especially with Nino, who takes the loss of her close ones very hard. Athos warps in to confirm we prevailed in our trial. He could have warped us directly to the shrine, but it was our tests to see if we were truly ready for the next step. We will be warped to an unknown location to meet Bramiment, the other legendary hero who still lives to this day. He is the only one to be able to lift the seal on the legendary weapons so we can wield them. In the depths of nowhere, we meet with the second legend. At first, it seems difficult to try and talk to him, but as Athos explains, Bramiment has rejected his sense of self, probably to master the dark arts, so his personality is a mirror of who he addresses. He states that while legendary, these weapons are not meant for human hands. However, he feels a familiar presence within Eliwood, which is Surly Roland's spirits, since he's a direct descendant from a hero. After a short consideration, Bramiment decides to break the seals, permitting us to get to the legendary weapons. With that done, we go back to the surface and must hurry to our next destination, as Nurgle must have sensed the seal break as well. But right on time, he appears in front of Nils and Ninian. His wound has fully healed, so he can start moving towards his goal once more. While we try to protect the siblings, Nurgle threatens to use his full power right there. Knowing what this implies, Ninian bargains to go alone, a request Nurgle accepts, and so they disappear, leaving a shockwave behind. It would have been lethal to Eliwood and Nils if Athos didn't raise a barrier in time. This puts in perspective what kind of power they'll have to go against, so our only option is to find the legendary weapons to use against him. Before departing, Athos gives Eliwood the last Heaven Seal, which finally works on him, contrary to the two previous ones, so he can finally get his promotion. We then move to Ostia, where the Sword of Seals lies. A final trial waits for us to be able to wield the blade, and it will finally confirm if we're worthy of it. At the Dragon's Gate, Ninian is still resisting Nurgle to not open the gate, but he's a bit over it. He wants the quintessence of a dragon, the ultimate power to be able to rule the world. If Ninian does not do it willingly, Nurgle has the means to force her to do it. Yet, Ninian refuses until the end, to the point where she transforms into her true form and tries to escape. Surprisingly, Nurgle lets her go. We come back to our group, who are now in some lava caves where Roland's weapon, the Durandal, rests. The air lingering is still the same as when the place was sealed. Even the former soldiers who were tasked of guarding the blade are still on the job, even if their physical body are dust by now. They will be our trial, and we must rise to the challenge. You can only bring 5 units in this battle, Eliwood included, so bring your best. Merlinus won't be deployable either. Your units will be separated in pairs along a tree path, Eliwood being the only one in the middle. Your goal is to claim a space, or in other words, move Eliwood on the tile where the boss rests. The way to him is fairly easy to cross, but keep an eye on the orange tiles as they will deal 10 damage to anyone who waits on them, enemy included. While the path to the boss is simple, the boss itself is the bulk of the difficulty in this chapter. Georg will wait for your team to come up to him, but will attack anyone who comes in his range, moving out of his way to come and meet you. His class makes him extra dangerous as his crit rate and damage threshold is very high, being equipped with a tomahawk, the strongest throwing axe. The walls to break on each side of the path are tough to break, and that will let the boss get the first attack if your units reach the end of the path before Eliwood does. This might make the end of the battle more complicated, but defeating him is optional. You just need Eliwood to claim the space after all. If you manage to beat him, Georg will drop the axe he uses, an excellent weapon for the last few chapters, so it's recommended you take him on if you can. The path to the sword is clear. Athos calls the spirit of Roland, who appears before him. While you'd expect a grand and gallant character, he appears to be very young, just like our protagonists. He cannot give his power to Eliwood, but what he can do is pass on to the other side so he can let his successor take possession of the blade. He does so, while Eliwood assists to the scene. To Athos' surprise, he could see his ancestor, a proof of his descendants. He takes the blade, now his, and leaves the cavern. Now when you get out, the scene plays without your intervention, a sign that something big is to come. The lords comment briefly on the blade when suddenly it starts to glow. Then, a dragon enters the picture, stunning the protagonists. Without a second thought, Eliwood lunges at the dragon and slashes it with his newfound sword, felling its target in one blow. It felt as the sword was guiding the arm, like if it had a will of its own. However, Athos looks at the dragon and seems to realize something. Before he can tell Eliwood, Nurgle appears saying that Ninian was useless in the end, so he came for her brother, who he subdues with his power, leaving the boy no chance. Eliwood asks the villain what did he do with Ninian, but Nurgle replies he did not do anything to her. He did. Since we don't seem to connect the dots, he reveals that the gate cannot be opened by humans, that only dragons can. Ninian was entranced by Nurgle's promises, and she opened the gate from her side and traveled to the humans' world. While she'd fallen for his trap, she managed to slip away from his grasp until a year ago when she met Lynn. When she transformed at the Dragon's Gate, she lost all her human memories, and yet Eliwood remained in her heart, hence why she appeared in front of the Lord moments ago. Realizing what he has done, Eliwood's voice starts to waver, but Nurgle does not relent. He states that while she's returning to her human form, it's only to say farewell. She's beyond saving, and it's all our Lord's fault. This sends Eliwood into such an emotional distress that Hector must step in and snap his friend out of it. But everything stops when Ninian calls to Eliwood. The protagonists all rush to her, Eliwood kneeling close. She's happy to see him unharmed, and with the last of her time, asks him to protect the land before passing. A sad scene ensues, but is quickly interrupted by Nurgle, who tries to torment Eliwood further. Until Athos steps in and attacks the Dark Mage for very little damage. Unfortunately, even the legendary flames cannot harm the villain anymore. He finally reached a new milestone now that he is impervious, but as a sign of respect for his old friend, he decides to leave us to our despair, confirming that he and Athos were once peers weaved from the same cloth. Curiously, he left Nils behind, but as he wakes up, he slowly realizes what has transpired until he finally sees the lifeless body of his sister in Eliwood's arms. Well, if it was not obvious already, the game makes sure to rub it in your face. To Hector's suggestion, they go back to Ostia Castle to regroup and recover from their emotions. Yet the game states that it's the most well-guarded of places, which is obvious foreshadowing that something will go wrong. The chapter begins when our group arrives to the castle. Hector learns that he just missed his brother who departed for a neighboring country the day before. No matter, he commands his soldiers to prepare rooms for us to decompress. A bit later, Hector asks Athos what's next, suspecting the living legend has another plan in mind. The old man replies with a story instead. 500 years ago, he met with Nurgle, who was wandering the desert in search of the truth of the world. Being equals in about everything, they became fast friends and believed they could solve the mystery of the world together. But such a feeling couldn't last. One day, Athos stumbled upon a village hidden in the desert, where humans and dragons lived together in harmony. These dragons were different. They were those who did not want to fight in the Scouring and instead retreated into the Nabata, secluding themselves from the rest of the world. Nurgle and Athos helped the village by creating a barrier as well as an oasis to help with living conditions. These actions granted them the right to live alongside the people and dragons of the village, eventually naming it Arcadia. It was a dream come true. The dragons' libraries were full of knowledge that the two friends studied for centuries, but eventually for different reasons. While Athos wished for the dragon's wisdom to spread outside the village, Nurgle studied the art of stealing the essence from living beings and turn it to power. By the time they realized what he was doing, it was too late. Nurgle was bewitched by the power and refused to turn back. By then, he was skilled enough to be able to extract the essence from humans, so the villager had no choice to defeat Nurgle, banishing him from Arcadia. He fled to Bern, where he continued his experiments and started to create his morphs, creature made to answer his call. They all have the same features, such as dark hair and golden eyes. Before he can continue, a soldier warns us that the castle is under attack. Oops! Turns out the assailants were teleported directly inside the walls, surprising the guards and defeating the forces. This is Nurgle's doing. He's the one who warped the enemies inside, and we need to hold them the time the reinforcements come. Despite being a late battle, this map isn't as difficult as chapters 26 or 27. There's going to be a lot of archers as enemies, so bring ranged weapons to retaliate, but watch your mages and flyers so they aren't overwhelmed. Green units will help a lot, drawing the attacks at the beginning so you can dispatch the archers with ease. Be sure to check out the chests. The pair contains a dragon shield and a white gem, while the one on the bottom has a body ring. There's nothing more to cover really, so let's talk about the boss. Denning is a morph whose only mission is to deliver a message for his master. He's a sniper with a longbow, and he's going to abuse the heck out of it to deal with green units. There's literally no challenge, he was meant to be defeated. Reinforcements will stop coming after the 5th turn, so if you've cleaned the castle by then, just pass your phases so you can end the battle. Our reinforcements finally come, so we've managed to prevent a catastrophe. These enemies were morphs, just like Sonia, Limstella and Ephidel before them. Athos pursues Nurgle's story a bit, stating how Greybeard thought his nemesis would strike at Arcadia, seeing as he was after Dragon's Essence, so he reinforced the village protection while waiting for Nurgle in the depths below the desert. This was not how Nurgle acts. Instead, he managed to bring the dragon siblings from the gate, completely avoiding Athos' trap. The only hope now is to gather all the legendary items, so Athos decides to go back to Bremimint to tell him all and borrow his power. While he does, our group will go to the Dragon's Gate. We may not have the power to defeat Nurgle for now, but we can sure party with his troops. While surprised by this answer, Athos agrees heartily. Before departing, the old man asks Eliwood about the Durandal. He has it on him, but cannot bring himself to wield it after what transpired. Athos asks to keep the sword for a while, and Eliwood accepts, saying he will be ready when he next wields it. The next guidance chapter does not have any requirement, as it's just a shopping map for you to make the final preparations before moving on to Badon and take Fargus' ship once again. While there's something special we can do in this guidance chapter, we can't do it right now, so I'll come back later to it. Hector will spare an amount of gold for us to get outfitted, so you've got that covered if you spend too much during the adventure. Get what you need, and we'll move forward to the last stretch of the game. Once preparations are finished, our group will then move to Badon and then to Valor. While this happens, we assist to a conversation between Limstella and Nurgle. The latter has a dragon stone on hand, the tool for dragons to draw their power from. He fuses it with Ninian's essence and manages to open the Dragon's Gate. While they would be ready to summon them, Nurgle states that he must be at his full power before doing so if he wants to ensure his survival. Their quintessence supplies are all dried up, but seeing as we're coming to them, he plans on stealing our essence, and with the amount he will gather, it will be more than enough to reach his goal. Ninian's death still lingering heavily on his conscience, Eliwood travels to the Dragon's Gate to face his enemy one final time. The end of our journey draws near, and we are expected. Our lords finally have set foot on Valor once again. While Fargus asks if they want more support, Eliwood declines the offer. It's our problem. In the meantime, Nils will stay with the pirates, but before departing, Eliwood tells Nils that while he cannot ask him for forgiveness, he must set his sight on moving past the pain and get back up on his feet. Nils stays silent but seems to at least listen to him. With that said, we depart, but Fergus stops Dart, asking him to come back alive, a thing Dart laughs at, stating the captain will kill him again if he didn't come back. I like these goofball pirates a lot. When it's time to go back to the ship, Fergus realizes he forgot to give us something important that would be useful in battle. Nils says he will go, and the captain lets him, almost as if he planned it ahead, so Nils departs, chasing after us. Just before our arrival, Nurgle infuses Limstella with power beyond her limits. While that makes her ultra powerful, her body won't be able to support it, and before long, she'll crumble to dust. That's more than enough time to face us though, and while our lords consider their next action, they get attacked by a bolt of magic. They were warned just in time by Nils, who managed to reach our group and sense the attack. He calls out Limstella, who was hiding nearby. She comes out of hiding, tells us she's here for our essence, and summons her minion. Nils snapped out of his despair and he says he's ready to face the music alongside us. This is the last hurdle before reaching Nurgle. Before engaging in the battle, Nils gives us an Earth Seal, the item Fergus forgot to give us. At this point in the game, it's rather useless, making me think even more that the captain did this on purpose. Anyway, bring your best and use your resources. While there are other battles to fight, this chapter is the best to make the most of what you have. The map is large and the opposition is ready. Nils will have all the rings you found so far, so you can use them as needed. Reinforcements will appear as you move forward. Some mages have long-range weapons, and there's many ballistae on the enemy's side. The Delphi Shield and the Iron Rune are really useful to reduce the heat. If you have the means to, I'd suggest to split your army in 3 groups and push on all fronts. That way, you'll be able to reduce the number of enemies on the map quickly, helping your movement. If they are at a sufficient level, you could even use Nils and Merlinus as bait to draw in the long-range attacks. Nils is nimble and Merlinus is sturdy, especially if he's promoted, since he can move with you, making it easy to heal him when needed. There are 3 ruins to visit. The top one has a bishop called Reno. He will join us for the rest of our struggle. He is a mysterious man whose support conversations can reveal a lot about lore not mentioned in the main story. Combat-wise, he's serviceable but better used as another healer. The middle ruin contains a ring for Nils called Set's Litany, a useful ring that enhances the avoid of a unit for a turn. The last ruin at the bottom is special in the sense that the character you meet is a playable character in the previous Fire Emblem, and also that you can get many different dialogues depending on who will visit. In my case, I sent Sarah, who was screaming at the top of her lungs until Sophia gave her a talisman, then disappeared. Sarah might be annoying, but there's no denial she has her fun moments. The 3 ruins are located at about the middle of the map, so once you've visited them all, you can consider that you've done more than half of the challenge. Be advised that some reinforcements will spawn from the outskirts of the map, but by then, focus on bringing back your army together at the Dragon's Gate before the boss fight will be a tough one. Limstella will bar your way to the gate, and she's a tough nut to crack. The power she was given makes her extremely tough to damage, while she'll dish out huge amounts to you if you're not careful. Her Achilles heel is her attack speed, as her tome's weight will slow her down, as well as having a whopping 0 in luck, so crits are also on the table of possibilities against her. That means that the Lunatome is an excellent weapon against her if you've trained Canis, which you should always do in my opinion. It was a tough battle, but the amount of experience you get makes it worthwhile. The war is not won yet after all. Before entering the gate, Eliwood asks Nils to share his story. We may know what he is, but we never knew his side of the story, so he accepts to tell us what he knows. Back a millennium ago, When dragons were exiled and they used the gate to find another world, it was inhabited by humans already. There were a few skirmishes with the humans of this world as well, but they finally found a new place to call home. Ninian was a medium in this world, staying close to the gate. One day, not too long ago while praying, the siblings heard a familiar voice calling. They knew they must not answer the call, but did it anyway. Once through to the other side, Nurgle stripped them of their power, forcing them to adopt human bodies to sustain themselves, creating dragon stones to contain their natural forms. Unfortunately, those were stolen too, completely denying them of their remaining power. They've managed to escape, however, disguising themselves as traveling performers, constantly on the move to escape Nurgle's grasp, until they met Lyn for the first time at the beginning of the game. At the end of her journey, the siblings kept moving on but were captured again. They considered ending themselves as a resolution to their problem until they met with Albert, Eliwood's father, who gave them the will to live once more. He was kind to them despite knowing all they did, and instead of shunning them, he comforted the pair, telling them stories of his family and homeland whom they loved to listen to. They even sensed that Albert's son will be the one to deliver them from their fate. And there they are, Eliwood being the one to lead the charge to save Nils and Ninian's memory, just like they felt a year ago. The boy still believes in the Lord, and so is his army behind him. Feeling bolstered and ready to take on the challenge, Eliwood enters the Dragon's Gate, ready to face Nurgle. Athos finally comes back, being successful in his errand. He found the legendary light tome wielded by Saint Elimine all those years ago. He also gives back the rental to Eliwood, being even more powerful now that it has been infused with more power. Hector gets Armads, the lightning axe, and Lyn gets the soul caddy. While it's not a legendary weapon, it still has been infused with the power to render Nurgle's dark cloak useless. Athos then asks Nils if he can sense Nurgle, which he can, but notices something odd in the energy. We must be careful and proceed with caution. Normal weapons won't work on Nurgle, so we must choose carefully who will enter in battle with us. Merlinus won't be able to follow either, so consider leaving some spaces in your character's inventory, as you'll get some powerful weapons during the next fight. After one last face-off with Nurgle, we confirm he's gone too far. He does not care for the pain of others and is unapologetic when confronted with his actions. The only thing that matters to him is power and gathering it. With these words, he calls upon his minion, who most of them we've already defeated. Yes, in an horrific turn of events, Nurgle created morphs to resemble the Black Fang members, and therein just to toy with us even more. He then tries to get under Eliwood's skin by saying how his compassion makes him weak and hypocritical, as whether you take a life with or without emotion, the result stays the same. The tactic works to some extent, but this time Eliwood stays composed. Athos then enters the dialogue and sees how, even after so many years, Nurgle didn't stop to reconsider his ways. While both men do follow the same path to power, Athos knows better than to steal essence from other beings, as it corrupts the very goal he wants to reach. This seems to rattle Nurgle, as these words were spoken much earlier when Athos first tried to stop his former friend. Nurgle removes his headwear to show the wound he suffered back then and how he still remembers the pain it inflicted, at how he felt betrayed by the same person he called his equal back then. Frustrated, Eliwood steps in once again and calls Nurgle a fool for thinking he's the only one who was in pain at that moment. But that frustration does not come from hate, it comes from pity. The Dark Mage laughs at our hero, then retreats along with his morphs. Eliwood, still on adrenaline, tells everyone to stay back. It's his fight. But Hector, Lynn, and all the characters you brought to the final battle will rally behind him, bringing our Lord's feet back on Earth, ready to face the last challenge. There are 6 rooms on the map, and 1 will open each turn. You don't have to beat the enemies within the same turn, but it helps reducing pressure. First to open is Yuhai wielding Rainflesh, the most powerful bow. The safe way to go is to pull back, let him chase you, and then gang up on him, but I decide to charge in like the reckless player I am. He will drop his weapon, so give it to your best bow user. Oh yeah, I forgot. Athos will also be playable for the last battle, so take advantage of his immense power. The next room to open is the top left one, where Kenneth waits. He's the one boss we haven't seen, as we faced Germ instead. Athos can single-handedly take care of this room, but any bishop who can wield Aureola can also take the group without much trouble, seeing as this tome gives you +5 resistance when equipped. He'll drop another light tome called Loose, and the druid minion will also drop the Guest-Spence tome. Third room to open is the middle left, who hides Brendan's morph with the Basilicos axe. I don't recommend taking him on melee range, as he'll shred anyone who tries. Like Yuhai and some enemies to come, let him approach first, and then deal with him. He's the ideal target to try Rainflesh. Fourth room to open is the middle right one, containing Darren wielding the Rex Asta lance. His damage output along with his high defense makes him quite scary to face off against, but use your powerful tomes and the Basilicos you just got to help deal with him. Fifth room to open will have 2 enemies to deal with, Ursula with Rexcalibur and Germ with a rune sword. Ursula can dish out great damage but cannot take it, so take advantage of this. Germ isn't better as his weapon prevents him from critting, but will absorb damage done just like Nosferatu at range. He's not really a problem to deal with either. Last room to open, and the toughest one to deal with, is the Reed brothers, Lloyd especially. Not only are they overall the strongest enemies to beat, they also share an A support together, so they are strongest when close to one another. You'll have to deal with one first, then the other will be a bit easier to fight. Once all enemies have been defeated, the big room up will unlock, revealing Nurgle with some more. Reinforcements will also appear at the bottom of the map, but once you've cleared them, it's finally time to confront Nurgle for the last time. While he's a tough opponent, Nurgle isn't the most difficult enemy to deal with. While his attack may pack a punch and his health bar may be humongous, but the new weapon you've just got can tear through his defenses, and Athos can deal great damage with Aureola to help the rest of your team. In the end, just like the others, he was only an obstacle in our way, albeit a bigger one. Nurgle falls and our heroes can finally get some respite. But not really. An earthquake starts, the room further back unlocks, and we hear a roar. To our heroes' astonishment, dragons are pouring out of the gate, and as with his last breath, Nurgle managed to activate it and summon dragons to our world. The situation is dire. What can we do? When the earthquake stops, we realize we're up against 3 dragons in all. Things are not looking good, yet Athos seems to have a plan. He teleports in front of the danger, and while he can stand the forces of 2 dragons, he struggles to keep them back. All of a sudden, Bramimund appears telling his friend that preparations are now complete. He draws from the power of the legendary weapons and a miracle happens. Ninian is brought back to life. Not only is she revived, but her power prior of being stolen is also restored. In a flash, she uses her ice power to dispatch 2 of the 3 dragons, but she collapses before managing to subdue the 3rd. Bramimin takes her and retreats, so all we have to do is to take care of the last one. This is it, the last hurdle of the game. The dragons are targets, but there are many enemies around to make it even more stressful. They're going to attack you from a distance, and you can't reach them unless you brought a warp staff. While the dragon seems to have a lot of movement, it does not actually move, but can hit from 3 spaces away. Its attack ignores your defenses, always dealing 37 damage to anyone and likely won't miss, so no one can withstand 2 attacks in a row unless healed in between. Furthermore, it has a total of 120 HP, so 3 bars of health, and its resistance is 10 points higher than its defense. Also, keep in mind that if you fail this battle, you'll have to deal with the first part of the chapter again. So, what should you do? Use the legendary weapons? That's one part of it, but the main lord's weapons are so heavy they likely won't be effective on the dragon, except for Hector. The weapons drop in the first part of the chapter are pretty useful, though you might have to trade them around your units so everyone gets a chance at swinging them. The most foolproof way to beat the boss is to choose one unit to go and attack the dragon, heal them, rescue the healer, and end your turn. This should damage the boss enough to give you the opportunity to pile up your attacks and prevail. Or pray for a critical hit, that can happen too. It took much effort and luck, but in the end, Sane deals the final hit with the Uber Spear we stole some chapters ago. Finally, the dragon is defeated, avoiding the potential catastrophe. We've successfully completed our journey. All is not perfect though, as Athos collapses, having used all his power in this last fight. It seems his life nears its end after a millennium. As he lays down, he sees the future, warning that trouble will stir up, but neither him or Bramimin will be alive to help when it'll happen. Another war will start, provoked by an evil star rising in burn. Fortunately, there will be people who will rise up once again to quell the disaster. And with these parting words, Athos' flame finally snuffs out, but not without a smile on his face. He could depart this world in peace, at least. Ninian, now back with our group, also senses the darkness that will encroach our world in the future. But Eliwood does not take heed. He's so glad she's back, and that's all that matters to him. Nevertheless, the siblings must go back to their world. After all, it's because of Ninian's weakness if all of this transpired, and a lot of both people and dragons suffered for it. While this is true, Eliwood insists that he still wants to make the world where dragons and humans can live together, just like in Arcadia. Despite the wishful thinking, the siblings know this won't come to pass soon, so they ultimately decide to go back to their world and seal the gate from that side. But Nils can sense the hesitation in his sister, as he senses that while she says she has to go back, he feels that in her heart she really wants to stay here. Her life will not be as long as if she returned on the other side with Nils, but he understands the wish of his sister, to stay with the lord she fell in love with. And with a final farewell, Nils leaves this world alone and seals the gate from the other side, cutting the ties between the worlds forever. Afterwards, our heroes leave the ruins being greeted by the warmth of the sun. a feeling they haven't felt in a long time. A year after the events, our character meets Eliwood once again at his ascension ceremony, as he will become the Marquess of FIRE shortly, following in the footsteps of his father. We proceed for a bit of pleasant banter before he becomes too busy with his role, Eliwood complaining about the stiff formal wear, a funny subject refreshing after the weight they had to endure throughout their journey. We even see a glimpse of Ninian being there as well. Our character states that while we're here to assist the ceremony, we will take the road shortly thereafter to keep honing our craft. Before separating, they announce to us that sometime after the ceremony, they plan to get married and they would like us to name their child. Skip to after the ceremony, Eliwood gives you your final farewell with a nice picture of him as a scene ender. And with this, ends the story of Eliwood, but not the game just yet. After the credits, you'll have some battle data, like in how many turns you've cleared chapters, and a short description of each character's personal epilogue. You can learn what they've become after the events of the game, a nice reward for your efforts. This can also tie in with support, as if you've gotten a support with a pair, it can create a common ending between them, like getting married or becoming super bros, changing their future. Some paired endings can even come with a note of tragedy, so it's fun to try different units in many playthroughs to find who can finish with who and get even more in-game lore in the process. It can even slightly change the ending of the game, just like you've seen with Eliwood and Ninian. If I had another character build and a support with him, the ending and character coming in during our talk prior to the ceremony would change. If you let someone die during the game, they'll tell you on this screen when they did, preventing you from knowing their ending. Another reason not to let anyone die. Another scene will play after all of this, where we can see an old Eliwood and Hector meeting a long time after their ascension to their new role as leaders. This meeting happens 15 years after Uther's funeral, whose passing happens during the events of the game. They reminisce about their adventure until Hector notices Eliwood's son at his side. Meets baby Roy, the future defender of Lycia. Ostia's ruler then decides to introduce his daughter, Lilina, who becomes fast friends with Roy. While they go play in the garden, our two lords show that despite being duty-tied, they still are the good friends they always were, making each other laugh and have a good time. But good things are not all this scene is. Both lords talk about a tragedy that happened in Burned, the king dying in a supposed assassination attempt on the prince. But it's really tough to get the details right, as a lot of information was brought up in a short amount of time. This makes them remember about Lord Athos's words, where a new danger will appear, but heroes will be there once again to come to the world's rescue. In the end, we can see the spark that lights the events of Roy's story. And this is the end of Fire Emblem 7. While this is the end of one story, it's not exactly the end of the game. There's a third route that unlocks once you've completed Eliwood's. You can now play Hector's route. It's the same story but told in Hector's eyes. Some differences include new chapters, new characters, more enemies, different unit placements and reinforcements, bosses having different equipment, and some more lore that you would not have in Eliwood's route, focusing on Hector's personal challenges. There's even a guidance chapter hidden in a guidance chapter to find. While the story follows the same core events, there's enough new stuff to keep the ball rolling and try the game once more. I decided to make another one in Hector's mode to show you a bit of the differences you can find in between the two routes. While I will not cover the full story, I still want to go over the new chapters and encounters you can find, as they contain additional pieces to the story, also going over the elusive Kashuna and his role. Here we go, once more.
Oh shit, here we go again.
One of the requirements for the secret double guidance chapter starts in Lynn's route, as you need to get Nils to level 7 before the end of chapter 10. It can be done easily, but it's a little time consuming. It's a good idea to put some of the battle animations off to speed things up a bit. Once done, the first requirement will be met, and that's the only thing you have to do in Lynn's mode. This chapter covers how Hector found out about Eliwood's endeavors, his relationship with his brother, and how he manages to leave the castle to find his friend. The Black Fang were already on his tail, as we know the seeds of rebellion against Ostia were sprouted already. Matthew was aware of the infiltration and managed to help Hector stay alive. You only have Matthew and Hector on this map. Use Hector on the front and Matthew to finish wounded enemies. Take the chest for a red gem, then make your way to the boss. It's a simple armor knight. There's nothing to say much except Wolfbale. Matthew can have a conversation with Wire if you want to gamble on his life, but that's the only special thing about the encounter. Hector decides to move out to his brother's knowledge. Instead of chasing after him, he asks Oswin to follow him and help him instead. You can also see that his illness has spread, as he's already showing symptoms. This is in part why Uther let Hector go. It's a way for him to hide his worsening state from his brother. Next chapter is the one where Hector meets with Eliwood and Centaurus, so we'll skip until chapter 15, where an untold battle will take place. After their victory in Loss, but before moving to Kalen, we get ambushed by a mercenary force hired by Darren. This is the same company Heath joined since he fled Bern. You can see how compassionate a man he is, being concerned with his companion even if they do not know each other. The attack is swift and coordinated, putting us on the back foot, so we've got to defend the throne the time our defenses repel the enemies. It's a fairly short battle. The enemies will rush you on two sides, while the boss will attack you from behind the walls as he moves towards the back from the beginning of the fight. But if you know what to expect, the battle for this chapter is quite easy. But be careful with the position of your mages, as the archers on this map likes to target them. The biggest challenge will be to secure the two chests in the narrow time frame before the enemy thief nabs them in your face. They contain a silver axe and a men's staff. There will be some reinforcements coming, but so few that once you've pushed back the main force, it's practically over. Seelan is the leader of the force and will target you from the beginning. He wields both a steel bow and a longbow to harass your units. He'll go for the back entrance, so put some sturdy characters there, and once he's in your range, he's done for, as any lord with their unique weapon can defeat him in one turn. Hector realizes after this battle that some of their enemies were from the same group that the opponents he faced during his first chapter and connects the dots on the fact that they'll have a lot of opposition in the coming clashes. From this moment, they start preparing themselves so they're ready to depart once they find Marcus Loss. The next important chapter will be 19 Gaiden, where you'll have to defeat Kashuna before he escapes. This is the second requirement to get to arguably the most important chapter in terms of lore. Before going to the Dragon's Gate, Hector and company decide to take a brief respite to catch their breath before the decisive battle. However, something is wrong. Ninian has gone missing. Well, almost, as we spot her moving towards some ruins as though she was possessed. The chapter begins with a flashback where we can see a man instructing two children to stay hidden in the ruins. He got them food and water for 10 days, saying he's going to search for their mother, called Aner, as she was captured. The man tells the girl to wait for him, but if he's not back before a set amount of time, she's to bring her brother and go to the other side, implying she's to travel through the Dragon's Gate. Back to current time, Lin catches up with Ninian, the latter feeling very familiar about the place. The rest of the group arrives, trying to make sense of the Dragon's Girl behavior. Hector tries to put pressure so they keep on moving, but both Lin and Eliwood insist to stay a bit, as it may be beneficial to Ninian. At that moment, an enemy druid teleports into the scene and approaches the group without hostility. He presents himself as a simple traveler, having a rest in these ruins. We decide to do the same. He describes the ruin as an old residence of a dark sorcerer filled with old but fascinating dark magic tomes. From what insight he gathered, he tells Hector he still needs to progress in the arts. When we ask why, the man reveals that in order to master the dark arts, one must be ready to leave who they are behind. The more you leave yourself behind, the more powerful the magic you can wield. This is related to Brahmin's behavior, being but a reflection of the person they are talking with, having no more human traits whatsoever. That's how they've managed to master the power to defeat dragons. Saying so, the druid finally shows his true color, stating he knows who we are and will take advantage of our exhaustion to delete us. Theodore teleports away, leaving a thick black fog behind. To make things worse, Ninian also disappeared, but we don't know if the enemy captured her. This will be a challenging map. Not only is your vision obscured, but there will be heavy resistance coming from long-range attacks. Ballistae will greet you and archers are numerous, especially at the beginning of the battle. To make matters worse, there's many thieves on the map ready to steal your chests and are cocky enough to even steal the items on your characters. Other units are mostly knights, mages, troubadours, some carrying status, inflicting staves, and pegasi close to the map's objective. Fortunately, the beginning is the hardest part. Once you've managed to reach the archer on the ballista, you've gotten through the worst part. For the chests, you can get a Draco shield and an Eclipse tome in the bottom chests, while the one up the map has a talisman. Once you close in on the throne, Theodore will attack you from a distance. The boss is rather on the easy side. He wields the long-range Eclipse tome that has my vote for the worst magic tome you can equip. Not only does it hit for half a unit's current HP, you really must be unlucky to be hit by the magic since it has the worst hit rate of all the weapons. Mix this with the fact that Theodore might still use Eclipse even when you're in the 1-2 range of his other tome, if one of your farther units is not at max HP, like he did in my game on Lucius while Hector and Lin were right there. Anyway, he goes down, is being washed by darkness. The threat now dealt with, our heroes resume their search for Ninian. Lynn finds her in another room fixating on a picture of a man and a dragon. This picture is different from those depicting the Scouring, as the person and dragon in the picture do not seem to be fighting each other. Lynn describes it as eerie. It must have been owned by the sorcerer inhabiting these ruins so long ago. After some time, Ninian comes back to the group out of her trance, ready to move on. The detour did not help her jog her memories, but that just means it wasn't meant to be. Or was it? Hector gives the order to move to the Dragon's Gate, so the group leaves the ruins. That is just before Nurgle warps in, as a green unit, not a red one. He forgot why he warped there, but remembers eventually. He forgot something here. Moving around a bit, he remembers that these quarters were his long ago. The thing he wanted to pick up has been forgotten and thus must not be of importance in the end, stating that he has power so nothing else matters, warping away. The information gathered in this chapter is crucial to piece out the true intention of why Nurgle was gathering power in the first place. With the sequence happening in the beginning, along with Theodore's info and Nurgle's appearance, the dots are starting to connect. But before spelling it out, we must finish Hector's story. On chapter 24, I get the alternate map where we fight Linus instead of Lloyd and recruit Geitz instead of Wallace if you make him talk to Dart, who are acquaintances. Geitz is a wanderer with no true goal in life, having seen the ugly side of his father's line of work. He comes equipped with a killer axe and a steel bow and has both good bases and growth, making him a great mid to late game pick that will hold his own without too much trouble. As far as his personality goes, he's easily bored and may act childish, seeing he always had what he wanted. While the number of axe units is large, if you choose to train Geitz, there's very little chance you'll regret it. The map will be filled with pirates and wyverns, along with mercenaries. The rest is the same as its counterpart. Nino and Jafar will have the same scene, and the villages will give you the same items. Finally, Linus will be the boss to overcome. He's much more brutal than his brother, but also much slower, so a bit more manageable. The end of the chapter will be parallel to Lloyd's one, Linus being ambushed by Limstella for his quintessence, leaving his body for the older brother to find. The chapter starts with Sonia demanding a Blackfang member to open the cell of a prisoner, the latter being very nervous about it. She pressures him so he opens it, and Sonia enters the cell. Inside, a man greets her, and we learn who this man is. Pascal Grantzer, a former count of one of Bern's territories. He was imprisoned after inviting civilians at his castle only to slaughter them all. He then fled Bern and joined the Blackfang only to be imprisoned by Brendan because of his brutality. Sonia decided to liberate him if he'd accept to defeat our group, a thing he accepts gleefully. We then arrive on the premises where we learn Hector received a tip that the Fire Emblem lies hidden in the area. He claims that thieves are hiding in the fortresses here and are in possession of the item we're looking for. Suddenly, Lynn spots the Blackfang ready to attack us. Pascal informs his men that they're going to preemptively attack us even if they should warn the chief instead. The boss replies that he does not want his fun spoiled, he wants to fight, and thus the battle starts. This will be another rough map to start, as you have very little place to maneuver around without being pelted by bolts. Keep your mages in forest and your flyers down the bottom until they're either out of ammo or you manage to reach them somehow. If you have an archer on your lineup, you can retaliate and try to take them out from a distance. The objective for this chapter is to reach the 3 fortresses located in 3 of the 4 corners of the map. You don't need Hector to visit them all 3. Any unit can capture them. Just deal with the enemies protecting the tiles, move over the tile and it's done. The fortress in the bottom is guarded by axemen. The one Pascal guards is filled with cavalry reinforcements, and the last one is protected by light mages, the bishop wielding a long-range stone, and with some pirates thrown into the mix to try and destroy the nearby village. If you manage to save it, the residents will reward you with an Elysian whip. It may be useful as, after a couple of turns, a Pegasus Knight will appear in the battle going straight for Hector. This is Farina, a mercenary looking for work, and will let you hire her if you can afford her price. 20,000 gold. There's a reason for this amount, but if you really want to know, you'll have to go through some support conversation because I'm not telling. Although be warned, Farina isn't worth all that gold. She's one of the two unique characters only accessible in Hector's route. She's the third Pegasus sister, being tied to Florina and Fiora. She comes with decent stats and growth, but slightly underleveled. Her growth are high enough to compensate the work you have to put in, so she can be viable and will unlock a special attack, the triangle attack if you make all three Pegasus sisters attack the same enemy, yielding an automatic critical hit with a unique animation. Back to the map, it should be mentioned that both the warrior and Pascal will move out of the fortresses once you move in their range. The warrior and bishop aren't much of a challenge, but Pascal might be. While you're pushing ahead to reach the ballista, you might be taken on the off foot by the advancing boss. While by himself he's not too much to write home about except for his speed, his massive cavalry reinforcements and long-range support may make the advance difficult, as he will attack with his spear while his minion will pile up on you, making it tricky to reach him. It may be wiser to capture the bottom fortress first and work your way up the two paths at the same time to ensure some of your units can reach him. The halberd here will do wonders to cut a path and the boss at the same time. Once down, focus on the last fort and complete the chapter. In the end, Hector fell for the trap, as Lynn likes to point out, leading to another bickering match between them, forcing Eliwood to separate the two. While we fell for it, we still managed to weaken the opposition, and that should be considered as a win. Everyone agrees and we move on. For chapter 26, I wanted to show you the alternative map where Kenneth would be our opponent, but I did not do things correctly and got Germ's map again. At least, that does not prevent me to present the other character you can get on this map should you not open doors before the 10th turn. Harken will appear as an enemy, but can be recruited by Eliwood, seeing as Harken was part of Elbert's personal guard. When you meet him, he lost his will to move forward and intends to launch a final attack on the Fang to preserve his honor. Eliwood makes him drop the idea and join us instead, with reason. Harken is a great unit capable of leading the front line the moment he joins. He still has room to grow even stronger, but is very well rounded as is. If you're in need of a strong late game unit, he's a great pick. Instead of following Eliwood to get the Randall, Athos warps Hector to the Western Isles where the Thunderaxe Armads waits for him. In order to get it, he must first pass the trial that will confirm if he's worthy of claiming it. At the destination, Hector has to enter a dark cave filled with smoke. Athos tries to warn him of the dangers of the trial will hold, but the Lord is so excitable and cannot wait to commence. There is more opposition than Athos thought, however, so he lets two more of our units join the fight to support Hector. We can't have any more, otherwise the Guardian may get uncontrollable. Not waiting any longer, Hector sets foot in the cave while Athos points out that his recklessness may be his downfall in the future, foreshadowing his demise. So yeah, only two other units can join Hector for this battle. I recommend a thief and a healer, as Hector can tank everything here, so he only needs some support. Beware the openings in the walls, they spew poison if you wait in front of them, so be careful. Other than that, it's not a challenging map, as all enemies are not promoted. Even the chests are uninteresting. The one closest to the starting point contains some pure water, the one in the top right corner has a wolf bale, and the one closest to the boss has an elixir. Nothing stellar since another unit drops a wolf bale, so you could get 2 of them in this chapter. It's not exactly useful seeing we're on the final chapters, but it's still something. Only the boss remains to talk about. Kaim will be your opponent on this map. He's the guardian who will test your strength to see if you're worthy of meeting Durban and Armads. He's tough, wielding a tomahawk as his weapon of choice, and can one-hit some of your units seeing as his power is pretty high. Hector can tank him just fine though, especially if you thought about equipping him with a sword. Heal when necessary, and eventually you will win the war of attrition. Claiming the space, a spirit manifests in front of Hector demanding to fight. He is revealed to be Durban, wielder and protector of Armads. His energy is akin to an endless bloodlust. His sleep has been disturbed and now the spirits wants a fight. With all this tact, Hector demands Durban to let him wield the Thunder Axe, and the request is accepted but with a warning. The moment he takes the weapon, his departure from this world will be a violent one. Hector brushes the warning off and leaves with the legendary axe in hand. The chapter then continues right after Eliwood gets the Durandal and the events thereafter. On Chapter 31 Gaiden, you can find the last character you can recruit. It's a bit difficult to get, and it's not really worth the trouble, but it's still another character you can get, and she's not even the last one, as Reno would join a bit later still. The requirement to get this character is to bring Barcha in your lineup, and I hoped you trained him. When you start the map, he will mention that there's an arena, and when he does, a great swordmaster will appear searching for her brother. This isn't Barcha, but he knows the woman. If you make him talk to her, he will recognize her and attack out of the blue. A battle will occur and pray your Barcha isn't strong enough to beat Karla in one hit, and sturdy enough to hold off at least 2 crits in case he gets double. When Karla realizes Barcha is much stronger than when they first met, she decides to join our group, seeing as her brother, Carol, is looking for strong opponents, so there may be a chance he might show up since we're all strong. Barcha decides to make her his mortal enemy, but will eventually fall in love with her, and the pair will make a child that will become a character in Fire Emblem 6. Karla is the most elusive character to find and is almost not worth it, seeing we're at the end game and many units will be on par with her or better. She is still usable for sure and has room to grow if you're willing to let her get most of the experience in the next chapters, and has many interesting support conversations to flesh out your characters even more. Apart from that, I don't have much more to say about her. To access this last chapter before the final one, you must finish the previous chapter in 20 turns or less, in Hector's route only. After the battle with Limstella, our group continues on the Dragon's Gate, but before they manage to get there, a huge ruin appears in front of our heroes. Fearing an ambush, we decide to check it out, just to be sure. The chapter starts with what seems to be a memory of someone related to Nurgle. They are berated, told that they're useless and frail. This is actually Nurgle's first morph being told off, since he made other puppets much more powerful and with special powers. This morph is Kishuna. We have entered the Magic Seal's domain once more, but this time the energy feels different. Instead of feeling aggressive, it feels sorrowful. Before we can say anything else, Lynn notices the enemy is moving towards our position, so we prepare to meet them. This is a small but tricky map. Along with Hector, you can only bring 4 units in this battle. The enemies will be tough and well equipped, so expect resistance. You must reach the center room, but that will be easier said than done, as many reinforcements will spawn during the battle, slowing you down. For the chests, the one on the right contains a fortified staff which can heal all units in range, while the one on the left has a rune sword able to cast Nosferatu at range. You actually can get 2. There's another swordmaster that also drops 1. Finally, once you get close to the center room, Valkyries will spawn at your starting location, all holding a bolting and hellfire tome. One will spawn each turn for 7 turns, and it can get mighty annoying, but that's a lot of experience right there, just before reaching the final chapter. Kishuna is still his old self, doing nothing, but this time he does not flee. He lets our heroes destroy him for good, finally ending his cursed existence. If you manage to complete the 3 Kishuna chapters, being 19 double Gaiden, 23 Gaiden, and 32 Gaiden, congratulations, you've completed the requirements to get the alternate ending. When you defeat Nurgle next, his death quote will be slightly different. There is, however, a mistranslation. Instead of quintessence, Nurgle should have said Einer. This mistake happened because the Japanese word for quintessence is Aier, which is very close to Einer, but this ties Nurgle as the man in the flashback Ninian had in 19 Double Gaiden, which means a mistranslation hides a crucial detail. Nurgle banged. Nurgle was Ninian and Nil's father. If you need more convincing, after the credits, just before returning to the title screen, you'll get a nice picture of the dragon and a man sharing a moment together. Perhaps the picture Ninian was staring at, and if you take into account what Theodore said about having to give up on yourself in your study of the dark arts, Nurgle must have forgotten his family in search for power, sacrificing a part of himself to attain the power he needed. This paints a rather bleak and tragic story about the antagonist gathering power to save his loved one only to lose himself in the process. And I've just spoiled it all for you. You're welcome. And there it is. This is the story of Fire Emblem The Blazing Blade. While I've told you quite a lot, there's still more I haven't covered, such as the secret shops and Hector's extra story bits. Looking at the runtime of the video though, it's not that big of a deal. I haven't even scratched the surface about the additional lore you can find in support conversations and the many houses you can visit throughout the game that adds to the world building, as well as the localization challenges, changing the setting slightly depending on the version you play. The game is made to be played many times over, so you can try different units, which in turn will change how you tackle each map, and even if you use some of the same characters, the leveling system makes it so they're always a bit different each time, making each run unique in terms of gameplay, even if the story stays the same. It's a pretty fun time overall, and I'd say this title is an excellent entry to the franchise for the uninitiated or those who are curious about the Fire Emblem games prior to the casual mode era. If you feel like challenging yourself, there's even a hard mode for every route, which will up the ante quite a bit, especially in Hector's story, being a big contrast to the game's generally lenient difficulty, so there's a bit of everything for everyone. Its story themes are also pretty interesting, going from trust and companionship to the burden of death and loss, and the recovery of those emotions. The characters, even the less important ones, are multi-layered, and it's interesting to discover bits and pieces of each one in every playthrough. And if you're familiar with Fire Emblem 6, it gives an extra layer to analyze, as many characters in Fire Emblem 7 comes back in Roy's story, while others aren't even mentioned, letting you wonder if they're even alive. If you're still here after all my rambling, I thank you for being there and hope you've enjoyed your time watching the video. It took a long time to make and I had many challenges to overcome, but at the end, I enjoyed the creative process and that's how it should be. I know I have many skills to work on, but honestly, I feel like it's a nice change of pace when I see all the slop shoveled daily on YouTube, so consider it my efforts to at least provide content alternatives to help make YouTube great again. Until the next video, be well and take care.